Chapter 12-14. However, she was still wrong. Bai Juan turned around and did not even look at her. His tone was very cold. Adjutant Zhang, go and drive the car over and send Miss Gu away. I'll take the Li family's car to school. Also, don't let others make decisions for me on what to eat for breakfast in the future. After saying that, Bai Juan did not say anything else. He picked up his school bag and walked out of the Bai family's house. Adjutant Zhang was stunned for a moment before he reacted. Yes. Gu Rou's expression was a little ugly. Old Master Bai frowned. When did this grandson of his become so unruly? This was obviously embarrassing the Gu family. Old Master Gu did not care about what to eat. He only felt that Bai Juan seemed to be a little angry. In order to ease the atmosphere, he teased his granddaughter. Look at you. You're being despised for chasing after him too closely. Gu Rou held the bamboo chopsticks in her hand and smiled. Grandfather, what are you talking about? I just wanted to get a ride on Bai Juan's car. Now that I have a car, it's the same for me to go to school myself. Although she said this, Gu Rou was very unconvinced in her heart. She did not expect that Bai Juan would not even care about their relationship on the surface for that child. This did not seem like something he should do. However, it did not matter. She was not in a hurry. Even in the cold, she had the confidence to warm him up. On the other side, in the high school section of number 1 high school, third-year class A, the people walking back and forth in the corridor of the stairs were all third-year high school students who were about to take the exam. They held advanced mathematics books in one hand and bought breakfast in the other. They walked very quickly. Under normal circumstances, 2 or 3 people walked together. Especially when it was almost time for the exam. They would basically do everything together with their good friends. The girls were wearing school uniforms and carrying their school bags. When they walked to the door of the class, they suddenly stopped. It was not for anything else, but because there was someone leaning against the railing who was not supposed to be here. That person was none other than little Aju, who was carrying a big pile of breakfast. She was still dressed the same as in the morning. She stood there cutely. Whenever a person walked over, she would raise her big eyes to take a look. Even the white cat on her head would follow her movements. When some people saw this scene, they were really so cute that they immediately took out their phones to take photos and post them on their WeChat moments. Does your school have cute things from number 1 high school? The other schools really didn't have it. Some of the seniors in the 3rd year of high school really liked little Aju. In their hearts, Aju was much more handsome than many boys. For example, the last time she carried a suitcase. Therefore, when Aju stood there, the senior sisters all surrounded her. Aju, are you here to look for Colonel Bai? Sisters will help you call them now. Her skin was even fairer up close. I really want to pinch it. Wearing cat paw gloves was too cute. Aju hugged the pile of breakfast and shook her head. No, I'm waiting for Brother Qingchen. I looked through the classroom just now, but he wasn't inside. Brother Qingchen? Who is it? Some people were still in a daze. The other girl exclaimed. It's that handsome transfer student. Only then did people realize that the handsome transfer student was not called a transfer student, but Helian Qingchen. Wait for him. The female seniors looked at each other. Did they hear wrongly? However, Aju nodded her head and continued to stand there waiting like a small mushroom. The handsome transfer student, oh no, I mean Helian Qingchen. He seems to have come very late. The female senior said to Aju, why don't you wait in the classroom with us? Yes, enter the classroom. Some of the top students had no resistance to Aju at all, and gave the person who suggested it a big thumbs up. Just like that, Aju was pushed into Class A's classroom by a group of fangirls. Someone was still introducing to Aju. Aju, that's Colonel Bai's seat. We just arranged a table. Do you want to sit over there? Aju remembered the conversation at the Bai family today. She paused and asked, where's Brother Qingchen's seat? That person was stunned at first, then pointed to the seat by the window on the far right. Aju looked there, and then walked over with her things in her arms. She tilted her head and bent her small body to look inside. There was nothing in the desk, not even a book. Why didn't second brother bring a book to class? It seemed that he definitely did not listen to the teacher seriously. Aju muttered and lowered her head. She was about to put all the breakfast on the desk. Bai Juan, Li Hailu, and the others walked in. The moment they saw Aju, all three of them paused for a moment. Aju had also finished her breakfast. She raised her head without any defense, and met Bai Juan's incomparably deep gaze. Li Hailu frowned. This is Helianqingqian's desk? It was already very obvious what Aju was doing. Every one of them had eyes. Bai Juan looked at the breakfast that was already sharp. His fingers that were holding the school bag tightly gripped it one by one. Even his smooth joints were a little white from the grip. When he went out, he was still worried that she would be hungry because she had not eaten. He did not expect that, in fact, she did not need him to worry at all. Not only did she know how to eat, but she also learned to bring breakfast to people other than him. Bai Juan once again realized how special Helianqingqian was in Aju's heart. The shock in Li Hailu's eyes was so obvious that even Xiaolin frowned and looked at Aju. Aju did not have much of a reaction. She lifted her school bag. Aju, you really? Li Hailu was very angry. Do you like her that much? Xiaolin reached out and pulled Li Hailu back. Hailu, no. This child has to be taught. She doesn't know anything at all. She always does things her own way. She doesn't care if others will make things difficult for her. The things that happened before were all small matters. We can all listen to her. But today we can't do it this time. Li Hailu was really sad. He did not understand why Aju would go against them for an outsider. She can be good to anyone, but she has to be good to Helianqingqian. Aju opened her mouth to interrupt him. Her voice was serious. That's right. I just like Brother Qingqian. Even if I make things difficult for you, this fact can't be changed. So you just think that I'm insensible. After saying that, Aju was about to walk out of the classroom with the little white cat on her head. Bai Juan turned around and pulled her back. He lowered his eyes and said in a deep voice, "Why did you leave without waiting for me to eat breakfast?" Aju did not want to talk about meat and vegetables. If she said it, it would seem that others would have to accommodate her. She would only make things difficult for others. However, she did not want to lie, so she shook her head. Chapter 12:15. Bai Juan no longer had the strength to ask anything else. After she said that she liked Helianqingqian, no matter what the result was, it was meaningless, wasn't it? He had always been on guard against Gucheng. He even felt that Aju would like someone of the same age as him. But now, Bai Juan knew that the person who could really take Aju away from him was not Gucheng. When Helianqingqian walked into the classroom with her school bag on one shoulder, Aju had already left. He was dressed very refreshingly. Even though it was snowing, it did not affect his temperament. When he saw the desk that was filled with breakfast, he yawned lazily and smiled. This was perhaps the tacit understanding between the siblings. Helianqingqian did not need to think to know who bought these food. After sitting down, she opened the plastic bag. There were a total of 10 steamed buns and vegetables inside. It seemed that her little sister had equated her appetite with hers. This was the rhythm of feeding a pig. However, for Helianqingqian, as long as it was something bought by her little sister, she would finish it no matter how full she was. Therefore, as her brother, Helianqingqian did not even think about it. She opened her mouth and took a big bite of the steamed bun. Her left cheek was bulged by something, and it was very eye-catching. Oh my God, I didn't expect him to be so handsome even when eating. Can you even smile when eating steamed buns? What should I do? When I see him eat, I feel that even the steamed buns are good-looking. Helianqingqian could indeed give people such an effect. He smiled faintly as he held the steamed bun in one hand and typed with the other. He sent a WeChat message to Aju. His side profile looked so handsome that people really could not get used to it. Li Hailu heard the surrounding sounds and threw the ballpoint pen on the table. He turned around and looked at Helianqingqian. The dissatisfaction in his heart had reached its peak. Helianqingqian smiled faintly. She took another steamed bun and ate it slowly. She knew that not only was Li Hailu looking at her, but also Bai Juan. Helianqingqian curved his thin lips. The effect was not bad. All in all, it was a beautiful morning. Although Helianqingqian was scolded by the teacher because she didn't take her first class to school, it didn't affect her mood. Aju's deskmate was different. Gucheng supported himself with his arms and stood in front of Aju with his long legs. It was more or less embarrassing. Little Bean, you've never brought me breakfast before. When he said this, Gu Chung was smiling, but there was no happiness in his eyes at all. Aju was also direct. Give me your Alaskan sled dog, and I'll buy you breakfast. Little Bean, I didn't expect you to know how to negotiate with others. Gu Chung couldn't help but laugh. But you're really something. It's obvious that your brother, and that Helly and Qingchen don't see eye to eye. Why are you still so nice to him? No wonder even my cousin is angry. Speaking of which, your brother and my cousin are developing quite quickly. Today, when I went to school, I even saw your family's car at the entrance of second high school. Now that my cousin is living in your house, it seems that Grandpa and Grandpa are very optimistic about the two of them. Aju didn't say anything. Instead, she turned on her phone and looked at the WeChat message her second brother had sent her. It was a selfie of him eating a steamed bun, and there were 2 words attached: delicious. Aju suddenly felt that no matter what Gu Chung said, she would not feel uncomfortable in her heart. Gu Chung also saw the photo. For some reason, he actually felt a little irritated. Why does he even want to send you a WeChat message for a meal? Aju ignored him. Gu Chung felt that he had never had so much patience with anyone before. Oh right, tomorrow is your brother's birthday. I heard from my cousin that there will be a lot of people invited. The group of high school students will have a party alone. When the time comes, you can be with me. You're too young, and your brother has to worry about whether he will teach you bad things. Moreover, at this point Gu Chung paused. The 2 elders seemed to have the intention to set the engagement between my cousin and your brother. When the time comes, the one who will be toasting with Bai Xuan will definitely be my cousin. With so many adults, it's not convenient for Bai Xuan to bring you along. Engagement? Aju's fingers that were replying to the message stopped. How could she forget? Little brother was not like her. He could get married. Aju had never thought about what it would be like for little brother to get married. However, she knew very well that little brother had always wanted a family. If he had a family after getting married. However, it seemed that she could not accompany little brother anymore, because she could imagine that in the near future, similar problems like vegetarian dishes and meat dishes would keep happening. At that time, it would be her fault for being insensible again. She did not like that. Aju suddenly thought of the birthday gifts that she had prepared a long time ago. There was also the problem of the dishes that they had discussed for the birthday party. Since it was so difficult, she would not participate. Just like today's breakfast, she could go to second brother for breakfast in the future. Yes, there was also lunch and dinner. Thinking of this, her chest did not feel so stuffy anymore. After Aju made up her mind, she deleted the WeChat message that she had already edited word by word. Then, she pressed the phone screen with her fingers. Second brother, I want to sleep with you tomorrow. Helly and Qingchen looked at the message on her phone and frowned. Then, she replied seriously, you can stay at my place until 12 o'clock. After 12 o'clock, I have to send you back to the Bai family. Then I'll stay until 12 o'clock. Aju muttered as she typed. At noon, we have to eat together, and at night too. Helly and Qingchen smiled and replied with 3 words. Of course. Aju was happy, and began to think about what to eat for lunch. Ordinary people could not outrun Aju. As long as Aju ate in school, she would always be the first to appear at the selection window. It was the same today. The teacher in the 3rd year of high school was still emphasizing the key points to remember today, and the range of questions that would be tested in the college entrance examination over the years. The students in the middle school had already walked out of the classroom quickly. Everyone's common goal was the cafeteria. There were also people who ate outside the school, and there were also people who ordered takeout, but most people still chose to eat in school. After all, the food in number 1 high school was famous in the education world. It was delicious and cheap, and there were many kinds of food. Aju displayed her usual style, which was to buy as much as she could. She knew that her second brother loved to eat white rice like her, so she directly brought 6 boxes of rice and a lot of fried dishes. There were a total of 10 lunch boxes, all of which were carried by her. These lunch boxes would definitely be difficult for others to carry, but for Aju, there was no pressure at all. During this time, she did not forget to stop and help the weak senior sister carry a kettle. Chapter 12:16. The third-year high school students were finally done with their classes. Aju did not meet Baizhuan and the others who were walking out from the other side. She was waiting outside with a lunchbox in her hand. Her small face was fierce, and she looked serious and cute. When her big eyes saw Helly and Qingchen walking out, they immediately lit up. Helly and Qingchen had just finished eating 10 steamed buns and was still full. However, when she saw that her sister was very happy, her originally good-looking face revealed a bright smile that could almost make people's hearts beat faster. The students at the side turned into fangirls in minutes. They could not help but reach out to hold their faces. I want to change sides. I want to choose my Prince Charming again. I originally thought that I was very happy to see Baizhuan in Class A, but I didn't expect that there would be an even happier existence. Oh my God, did you see him not smiling for a minute? My heart, it's beating so fast. Helly and Qingchen walked past these students and walked towards her little sister. She reached out her hand and touched Aju's head. The intimate action was almost subconscious. Aju liked to be touched by her second brother the most. Following that, her eyes also smiled. The way she tilted her little head really looked like a little tiger. However, she was still a little troubled. I originally wanted to buy 5 more steamed buns, but I didn't have time to help people carry water. If I had known earlier, I would have carried them over my head. What if these things are not enough to eat? Helly and Qingchen glanced at the 10 lunch boxes and coughed lightly. Good girl, it's enough. Really? Aju raised her head and said very seriously. Second brother, you don't have to save money for me. I've kept the pocket money you've given me all these years. I can buy more. Helly and Qingchen immediately said. It's really enough. I'm definitely not saving money. He knew that his family members always had a special appetite when they were growing up. Almost every time his brother saw someone, he wanted to tear them apart and eat them. This was a problem since he was young. He was still considered normal. It was only when he was in junior high school that he started to act up. Speaking of which, Aju also took after her brother in this aspect. Although one ate people and was purely carnivorous, the other ate grains and was purely vegetarian. But they could eat so much. Indeed, he didn't have enough money to raise them. This time, Helly and Qingchen had another motivation to earn money. In the future, she would have to accept more missions. Otherwise, how would she be able to support her brother and sister? Aju did not know what her second brother was thinking. Her eyes were still searching for where to go for lunch. Helly and Qingchen had already reached out to take the lunchbox she was holding and took her into the classroom. He was a new transfer and didn't have a desk mate. At this time, most of the students had gone to the cafeteria. Of course, some people would bring food to the classroom to eat. After all, it would not affect others. Aju followed her second brother and sat down. The cat's tail wagged above her head. She opened the lid of the lunchbox for the little white cat. After dividing half of the rice in dishes, she fed herself a mouthful of rice and ate it. Helly and Qingchen looked at her from the side and rolled up her sleeves with a smile. Just like when he was young, his older brother would roll up his sleeves for him. The girl who brought food back from the classroom held back for a long time. In the end, she secretly took a picture and posted it on her WeChat Moments. Heavens, how can it be so sweet? Soon, this WeChat Moments received a lot of reposts and comments. When Li Hailu saw this WeChat Moments, he was about to buy something with Baizhuan and go back to the classroom to eat. He immediately changed his mind. How about this? Since there's still a lot of time, let's eat outside the school? I don't want to move. Baizhuan had already walked to the window. Xiaolin also saw that WeChat Moments and immediately pulled him back. How about we go to that popular steamed bun shop? How can you bring it back for Aju if you just order it? Other than rice, Aju's favorite thing to eat was hot steamed buns. It was obvious that Baizhuan was moved by Xiaolin's words. He retracted his long legs and said, "Let's go." Xiaolin and Li Hailu looked at each other. As expected, only mentioning Aju would change Master Bai's mind. The steamed buns at the entrance of the school were indeed delicious. The noodles used by the couple were very particular. They never added other messy things. They were all pinched and steamed. The skin was thin and the filling was big. It was very cold outside the school. At this time, there was definitely a queue. Bai Juan stood quietly in the middle of the crowd in his school uniform. He waited for half an hour for a few steamed buns. Li Hailu shook his head at the side. This is really not like Master Bai, who cherishes time like his life. One had to know that Bai Juan had always been a very well-planned person since he was young. He did what he should do. His self-discipline had always been very good. For him, it was probably only at this time that he would waste his time waiting in line. Shaolin put one hand in his pocket and pushed the glasses on his face. That's why I said that when it comes to Ajiz matters, I will never be able to compare to him. Li Hailu was dumbfounded when he heard that. He's your biological child, and you're his descendant. Of course you can't compare to him. Shaolin looked at him and felt very annoyed. How should I put it? Hailu, sometimes I really don't know what to do to save your EQ. Get lost. Li Hailu kicked Shaolin. At the age of 17, he liked to play on the streets. It was as if only in this way could he experience the purest kind of youth. It was still snowing outside the school. When Bai Juan bought the steamed buns, his black hair was stained with snow. However, he looked especially good-looking, especially after he took off his mask. The smile on his face made the girls in the queue blush. The students of number 1 high school all knew that Bai Juan especially liked to wear masks in winter. It was just that with his long legs and narrow waist, his temperament was outstanding. These ordinary things became bonus points when they were worn by Bai Juan. Many people would feel their hearts thump because of his pair of pitch-black eyes. Bai Juan really had an appearance that could attract bees and butterflies. Even if he was wearing a pure black mask, it would not damage this kind of aura. Instead, it gave off a very cool feeling. Guro, why aren't you leaving? A girl bumped into Guro. Then, when she saw Bai Juan across the road, she smiled. I was wondering why you weren't leaving. So you saw your sweetheart. Guro looked at the tall and straight figure and pulled her classmate. Don't talk nonsense. He'll hear you later. So what if he hears us? The girl continued. You're the school belle of number 2 high school. The school belle and the school belle are a perfect match. Moreover, your family members all know each other. Also, how did you come to school today? We all saw it. You came in the Bai family's car. Tell us honestly, did Bai send you to school? Guro did not deny it. Instead, her face turned red. I told you not to talk nonsense. Why are you still talking? Okay, I won't talk anymore. Let's go look for them. Since we've met, let's have a meal together. Chapter 12:17. If it was any other time, Guro would definitely agree. But this was where she was smart. She knew when to stop. This was also why Guro avoided Bai Juan when she said some things, because she knew that this person could not be provoked. Fortunately, Gu Qing did not know anything. He thought that she and Bai Juan were really together and helped her by the side. But at the same time, Guro knew very well that if she went overboard with some things, the gains would not make up for the losses. What's there to eat? Avoid them. Let's shop for a while more. You guys also accompany me to pick out a gift. I'm going to give it to you tomorrow. I was wondering why you dragged us out to shop today. It turns out that you want to buy a birthday gift for Bai Juan. You're buying it so secretly because you want to give Bai Juan a surprise? Guro smiled and said, Of course, birthday gifts have to be more mysterious. Guro, bring us to Bai Juan's birthday party. Xiao Qing is Heila's girlfriend anyway. Bai Juan shouldn't mind. Guro patted her hand. I'll definitely invite you guys. For this, we've even arranged a small party alone. When the time comes, we can have fun together. Us? The girl laughed. Guro, could it be that you and School Bobai did this birthday together? Guro pushed her. You're talking nonsense again. My grandfather and Bai Juan are family friends. My grandfather will be staying at the Bai family for the next 2 days because he wants to meet with his old friends. Bai Juan's coming-of-age ceremony is no small matter, so my grandfather came up with an idea. This is not something I can decide. Did I hear wrongly? You actually stayed at Bai Juan's house. The girl touched her. Tell me honestly, did anything happen between you guys? Guro blushed and did not say anything. She knew very well what expression was the most appropriate time to make. As for whether others would misunderstand or not, that had nothing to do with her. As expected, the two girls beside her widened their eyes. Looks like there's progress. Heavens, although it's you, Guro. I feel so jealous just thinking about that scene. You have to know that Bai Juan has never allowed anyone to get close to him in the past. Don't ask me anymore. I'm going to buy a gift. The more Guro changed the topic, the more imagination the two girls had. They smiled and held Guro's hand. Since they were going to attend School Belle Bai's birthday party, it was definitely not good to go empty-handed. They had to pick out some gifts. Across the road, Bai Juan had already bought the steamed buns. It was only when he entered the school that he remembered that he still had the passbook in his phone. A Jew had sent him a message in the morning, saying that she would eat by herself this afternoon. In the end, he had no choice. Everything had become a subconscious action. He wanted to buy her favorite things, but he had forgotten about this fork in the road. Bai Juan lowered his head and looked at the steaming vegetable bun in his hand. He still sent a WeChat message to a Jew. Are you eating now? When a Jew saw the WeChat message, her cheeks were stuffed with rice. She used one hand to reply, yes. After thinking for a while, she added, I eat a lot. You don't have to worry about me. It would be a lie to say that he was not disappointed. Bai Juan pressed his finger on his phone. Eat more. I'll pick you up after class. No need. A Jew typed seriously. I'll eat outside tonight. I'll go back after I finish my homework. She had this idea when she went back yesterday. However, after what happened in the morning, a Jew was even more certain of her idea. In the future, if she could eat outside, she would eat outside. It would also save others the trouble of accommodating her. Moreover, with her second brother here, she would definitely have to eat with him for the next few days. On the other side, Bai Juan looked at the last WeChat message and the picture on his moments. He stopped in his tracks and felt that the soup dumplings in his palm were burning hot. He looked at one of the people in the picture with a faint smile, while the other tilted her head with complete trust. His eyes felt a little piercing. Master Bai, why aren't you leaving? Li Hailu reached out and put his hand on his shoulder. Naturally, he saw his phone screen. His smile froze, and he immediately turned around to give Xiaolin a look. Before Xiaolin could say anything, Bai Juan put all the soup dumplings in his hands into their arms. Throw them away or eat them. It's up to you. Hey Bai Juan. Li Hailu did not call him back no matter how hard he tried. He lowered his eyes and looked at the steaming buns. He knew that Bai Juan was feeling bad. After waiting in line for more than 20 minutes, this was the result. Why did a Jew have to be like this? Li Hailu said dejectedly. What should we do now? Eat. Xiaolin's eyes also darkened. He was more or less worried about Bai Juan. This was because even he could feel that a Jew treated Helian Qingshan differently. Not to mention Bai Juan, who was the most familiar with a Jew. He had once thought about what would happen if a Jew fell in love with someone else in the end. He knew Bai Juan better than anyone else. Bai Juan could not bear it at all. To Bai Juan, a Jew was not only the person he liked, but also the person who had been by his side since he was young. The more reluctant he was to part with such a relationship, the more worried he would be about losing it. However, if he was really about to lose it, he really did not dare to imagine what Bai Juan would do. The snowflakes on the field fell one by one. After leaving the school, Bai Juan did not go home. Instead, he went to the dojo where a Jew often went to practice martial arts. He stood there for an entire afternoon. When he returned to the Bai family, his black hair was covered in snow, and even his eyelashes were the same. Old Master Gu and Old Master Bai were playing chess in the living room. When they saw him like this, they were both stunned. Bai Juan, what's wrong with you? Nothing. Bai Juan held his school bag with one hand. His head was slightly lowered, and his black hair covered his face. Indeed, no one could see his expression clearly. Old Master Bai felt that something was not right. But his grandson was old after all, so he did not know what the problem was. When Gu Rou heard this news, she begged Auntie Wang to teach her how to make ginger soup, so that she could serve it to Bai Juan. When a Jew returned, she saw Gu Rou standing at the door of the room. She paused for a moment, and walked to the guest room with the white cat on her head. A Jew thought that tomorrow was her little brother's birthday. Even if she did not appear, She still had to deliver the gift. There was a message from Gu Qing on her phone. He asked Aju to promise to buy him breakfast, and he would give the Alaskan sled dog to Aju. Anyway, it was just a matter of breakfast, so Aju immediately agreed. The next day at dawn, Aju packed her things and left the room. When she left, the servants had already started to set up the venue. No one noticed her, except for Gu Ro, who was scheming in her heart. Chapter 12:18. Aju. Gu Ro took advantage of the fact that she had not left the courtyard, and ran over with a troubled expression on her face. I know you have some misunderstandings about me, but today is your brother's birthday. Many people will be here in the afternoon. You grew up in the mountains when you were young. Perhaps you don't understand that aristocratic families like ours always have a lot of misgivings. Your brother, and I don't want you to be unhappy. If your expression isn't good, many people will be embarrassed, so I really hope that you can act a little happier. I heard from Gu Qing that you want to give Bai Juan a gift. That Alaska is too fierce, and isn't suitable for it to appear at such a grand banquet. If it bites someone, it will be very difficult for the Bai family. If you only want to give a dog to your brother, you can wait until the banquet is over. During this time, you can play with us. What do you want to play? We will accompany you. How about it? Aju's voice was very calm as she gave her 2 words. No need. Seeing that she was about to leave, Gu Ro quickly said, Aju, you didn't eat breakfast yesterday. Your brother is very worried about you. Today, Auntie Wang specially made noodles for you. It's vegetarian. You can leave after eating. Don't let your brother worry about you. Aju turned around. She had a small face and her eyes were very beautiful. She did not say anything. She just glanced at Gu Ro. Gu Ro was still smiling. You can't always do whatever you want just because you're a younger sister. You should know how important today's coming-of-age ceremony is to Bai Juan. Aju, although you're still young, there's something I want to tell you. Not everyone is worthy of the Bai family. Compared to a dog, what Bai Juan wants more is endless power, and this can only be given by the Gu family. Hearing this, Aju finally opened her mouth. Her tone was very calm. I'm also very rich. Ha ha ha. Gu Ro laughed when she heard this, and there was another meaning in her words. Aju, you're really naive and cute. In the future, you'll know what I mean by power. At your age and status now, you really won't understand. Aju didn't care what Gu Ro thought. Bai Juan liked dogs. She knew it better than anyone else. Going to school was to hold Alaska's hand. Gu Qing kept his promise. He didn't wear a school uniform. He wore a black leather jacket on his upper body, and held the Alaskan Malamute with one hand. He always felt that it was difficult to control it. On the other hand, the big dog became much more obedient after seeing Aju. It really did not know who was the master. Little Bean, where's my breakfast? Aju saw that Gu Qing was holding a big dog that he couldn't control, and felt that it was difficult for him. She immediately took out the big steamed buns that she had bought from her school bag. Here. Gu Qing looked at the 10 steamed buns in front of him, and was immediately dumbfounded. You want me to eat this? I always eat steamed buns for breakfast. After saying that, Aju added, the steamed buns in this shop are very delicious. There are vegetables inside. Gu Qing didn't believe it. Did you also buy steamed buns for Heli and Qingqian? Yes. Aju nodded. Gu Qing said, you bought 10. Okay. Aju looked at the big dog and waved at it. Gu Qing gripped the dog leash in his hand tightly. Heli and Qingqian has finished eating? What's his stomach made of? 10 steamed buns. Who is going to be stuffed to death? Aju said with a small face. I've sent you breakfast. Are you going to give me the big dog or not? 10 steamed buns for an Alaskan dog. I can't believe I would do such a losing deal. Gu Qing really felt that he was crazy. There must be something wrong with my brain. But for your own good, you'd better not send this dog to your brother's birthday party. It will be very troublesome if it bites someone. You can send it in advance or after the party. It's up to you. I'm going to your house first. Everyone will be very busy today. Take care of yourself. Aju nodded. She didn't tell him that she didn't plan to go to the birthday party at all. She was going to follow her second brother today. Gu Qing saw that she only nodded and felt extremely helpless. If his grandfather saw this, he would definitely laugh at him. Ever since he was born, He had never been so kind to anyone. Little Bean, don't you have anything to say? Gu Cheng raised his eyebrows. He looked very handsome. A Jew brought the Alaskan dog over, touched the big dog's head, and said to Gu Cheng, I'll give you the money tomorrow. Do I lack money? After Gu Cheng finished speaking, in order to avoid being angered by her, he had to change the topic. Watch the dog. I'm leaving. A Jew nodded. Gu Cheng was about to leave when he saw a bicycle in front of him. There was a person sitting on the bicycle. He supported the bicycle with one leg and had a faint smile on his face. This was Enchanting. Gu Cheng hesitantly stopped his footsteps. A Jew was happy. She ran over in an instant, and the Alaskan dog followed behind her. When the Alaskan dog saw Enchanting, it immediately showed its fangs. It was obvious that it wanted to pounce on Enchanting. However, in the next moment, a strange thing happened. The originally fierce large dog suddenly stopped in front of the bicycle, and its back was still trembling, as if it was afraid. Gu Cheng felt that he must have seen wrongly. No one knew better than him how powerful this Alaskan dog was usually. Would it be afraid? Then he looked at Enchanting, who was holding the bicycle. The faint smile on the corner of his mouth didn't change at all. His eyes fell on the Alaskan dog indifferently. This dog is not bad. Oh. The Alaskan dog retracted its claws with trepidation. A Jew held the big paw and said in a serious manner, It's greeting you. Gu Cheng. Is there such a way to greet someone? Want to tear the other party apart? He thought that only a Jew would think so in the whole world. Unexpectedly, the person who was attacked actually smiled and reached out his hand to hold the Alaskan dog's paw. Hi, hello. Gu Cheng swore that he really saw his beloved dog trembling, even though that beloved dog had already been sent out by him. But wasn't this too unusual? This is... Enchanting seemed to have just noticed him. A Jew introduced, Gu Cheng, my deskmate. Also surnamed Gu? Enchanting continued to smile. That's a really good surname. Gu Cheng looked into his eyes and found that there was no warmth in those eyes. He thought of that day in the cafeteria. It was this person who had a conflict with his cousin and the others. Gu Cheng wasn't present at that time. Later, he heard the whole story. This person used such a method to get close to a Jew. It was really unpleasant to see this. He walked towards Enchanting with one hand in his pocket. When he brushed past her, he said in a low voice, That's why I said don't provoke the one surnamed Gu. You can't afford to. Chapter 12:19. Hearing this, Enchanting raised her eyebrows, and the smile on her lips became even wider. Gu Cheng did not see Enchanting's expression. After saying this, he stepped onto the Land Rover that was parked at the side. Even his back looked very cool. Let's go. Gu Cheng gave the order to the driver. But from the corner of his eyes, he looked at a Jew who was standing not far away. He originally wanted to stand up for his cousin, but seeing the little bean like this, he knew that he couldn't do anything. No wonder Bai Juan didn't find trouble with Enchanting, because the little bean's performance was too obvious. It was as if she was saying that she was protecting that person, and no one could touch him. Gu Cheng clenched his hands, feeling more and more irritated. This little bean, why did she have such bad taste? The old driver seemed to have sensed his young master's displeasure, so he didn't say anything along the way. The Bai family's decorations were almost done. The hall was big enough, and there was a row of dining tables. The only thing missing was the flowers on them. A grill was set up in the courtyard. This was probably a Muslim chef who wanted to roast a whole lamb in the courtyard. There was also a pile of wood at the side, as well as all kinds of tableware. Each set was wrapped in special things, and it was very stylish. When Gu Cheng came in, he saw Gu Rou instructing the servants to make slight adjustments. He couldn't help but laugh. Sister, you haven't married yet, but you're already so active. What are you talking about? Gu Rou reached out to cover his mouth and looked around nervously. Gu Cheng looked at her and frowned. What's with your reaction? What are you feeling guilty about? You're the one who's feeling guilty. Gu Rou heaved a sigh of relief when she saw that no one was around. She reached out and took his car keys. I'm going to pick someone up from school now. I don't want to talk to you anymore. You should change your clothes too. You can't attend the birthday party like this in the afternoon. Gu Cheng smiled. I'm not the main character anyway. By the way, where's Baizhuan? Why don't I see him? To be honest, sister, the two of you should be on good terms now, right? When Gu Rou heard this, her fingers clenched tightly. Last night, no matter how she knocked on the door, Baizhuan did not let her in. He was just short of coldly telling her to get lost. Even when the doctor came, she wanted to send him ginger water. He even asked Auntie Wang to throw away the ginger water that she had boiled. He clearly didn't give her any face. Even when he was sick, he did not forget to ask if a Jew had come back. Today, when he heard that there was a purple jade Buddha head, he left with Deputy Zhang. He didn't even look at her, who was helping to decorate. She was so helpful in the Bai family. Did he really not feel anything good about her at all? Gu Rou recalled that when the two of them first met, it was Baizhuan who was discussing business with her grandfather. Grandpa had also said that their schools were close to each other, so they should spend more time together. However, Baizhuan refused at that time. He said, I usually have to take care of my sister, so I don't have time. I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you, Grandpa Gu. Grandpa smiled without saying anything, but he encouraged her to be more proactive. At that time, she was still angry, thinking that this Baizhuan was really proud and arrogant. But for some reason, the more he looked at it, the better he felt. This was probably the feeling one would have after falling in love with someone. Even if that person didn't like her, she had to work hard to get it. Sister, I'm asking you a question. Gu Qing dragged out his tone. Gu Rou didn't answer directly. Why are there so many things? When did you become so gossipy? All right, I won't talk to you anymore. I have to hurry to the school to pick them up, and then go get the gifts together. Yes, he had to follow her steps. Baizhuan could reject her once, twice. He couldn't reject her a third time. Moreover, at the birthday party, there was one thing that he had always wanted, and he would definitely not reject it. Gu Rou smiled when she thought of this. She called Old Master Gu sweetly and confirmed again. Grandpa, do you really want me to hand that thing to Baizhuan? Don't worry, that child Baizhuan will like this gift. Even if you don't give it to him, I have to give it to him. Old Master Gu held a fountain pen and laughed softly. I've already asked my secretary to prepare the things and sign the papers. When Baizhuan finishes cutting the cake, you can hand it to him. There will always be people who like to see a golden couple. Grandpa, Gu Rou pulled open the car door and called out unwillingly. Old Master Gu chuckled. Okay. I won't talk about it anymore. Why are you still shy? Gu Rou said a few more words to Old Master Gu before hanging up. She sat in the car and looked down at her phone. At the birthday party, she would give this gift away. A Jew should understand the difference between her and her. In the end, she was just a child from the mountains. If she had been the little princess of the Bai family, she wouldn't have hated her so much. But she just had to be such a hindrance. Gu Rou tightened her left hand and laughed again. How could an orphan girl be worthy of the Bai family? The scenery outside the car window quickly passed by. On the mountain road leading to the suburbs, Baizhuan sat at the back of the car. The back of his hand still had the needle marks from yesterday's intravenous drip. His throat was so painful that even his nasal voice was heavy when he spoke. Take a shortcut. Young master. Vice Commander Zhang sat in the passenger seat and said worriedly, You're not in good health. There's still a banquet in the afternoon. Why don't I order the things first? We'll come back another day to get them. Baizhuan coughed heavily twice. His side profile remained handsome and indifferent. I'll get them today. There's news from Old Su. There's someone else who wants this purple jade Buddha head. Vice Commander Zhang opened his mouth. In the end, he couldn't help but ask. Young master has bought quite a number of jade Buddhas for Mississippi. Actually, it doesn't matter if there's one or two missing, right? She's not in a good mood recently. Baizhuan turned his gaze over. The purple jade Buddha head is different from the others. There's a relic of an eminent monk in it. It's said that it fell from Mountain Tenya. It can help people block the disturbances of the mortal world and protect people from being invaded by all things. It's very suitable for a Jew to wear. After Vice Commander Zhang heard this, he didn't continue to persuade him. Because only he knew that the young master didn't just take a fancy to this purple jade Buddha head these few days. A long time ago, The young master had looked for many people to buy this purple jade Buddha head. In the end, it was old Master Gu who pulled the strings and found the whereabouts of this Buddha head. It was indeed impossible to persuade the young master to give up now. If it wasn't for the news of the Buddha head in old Master Gu's hands that day, the young master probably wouldn't have agreed to go shopping with anyone. He could see that the young master was not happy at that time. But even at that time, the young master didn't look as lonely as he did now. Lord Bai didn't know that a Jew was bullied. When these things happened, he wasn't there. If he knew, Gu Rou would have been over long ago, and Qingchen wouldn't have appeared. There wouldn't have been any story at all. So don't distort the plot and character settings. Moi. Chapter 12:20. The place where the purple jade Buddha head was placed was in an ancient town near the capital. This ancient town was not very famous in the past. It was not until a variety show came to film that it became very popular. Many people would bring their children here because of its fame. Therefore, a short drive of more than an hour was stretched out wirelessly because of the congestion on the road. Bai Juan and the others were driving a Hummer. The advantage of such a car was that it would not hold up the bottom. The disadvantage was that it was too big, unlike some old cars that could be rubbed over. Fortunately, the driver was an experienced driver. Under normal circumstances, he was very experienced. If he was in a hurry, he could take a shortcut. However, taking a shortcut meant that he had to take a dirt road. After considering the safety issue, the driver decided to wait for the train to open. Bai Juan was indeed no longer as sharp as before. It was probably because he was sick that he was not so sharp anymore. However, his temperament still did not change. He still wore a black mask on his face. He got out of the car and looked at the car in front of him. Then, he raised his hand to look at his watch. Call home and tell grandfather not to worry. I will be there on time. Vice Commander Zhang saw his actions and knew that he was going to walk over. He quickly followed behind. Fortunately, the road was not far. It was less than a kilometer to the entrance of the village. After entering the village, there was an ancient bluestone path. Bai Juan stood there, attracting many people's gazes. He pulled out the address stored in his phone and walked in front of a villager. He coughed lightly and asked, "Granny, do you know how to get to this place?" The old woman spoke in the local language. She puffed up her cheeks and replied. Bai Juan was a native of the capital. He could not understand the dialect in Hebei province at all. He could only guess with his own understanding. In the end, the old woman shook her head. Only then did he know that this granny did not know how to read at all. Because the place was not easy to find, Bai Juan could only ask people in the village one by one. A buzzing voice came from the mask, making people anxious for him. It was not easy for an uncle to come. After looking at the address on the phone, he said that he wanted to bring Bai Juan there. It turned out that the person who owned the purple jade Buddha head was an eminent monk who traveled the world. He had only recently settled down here. When Bai Juan heard this, he immediately followed. It was a very ordinary courtyard house. The flowers and plants planted in the courtyard house were all covered in snow. Only Uncle Dongqing was still a little green. As soon as Bai Juan walked in, he heard a voice coming from the courtyard. Ba. It's not that I don't want to give this purple jade Buddha head to you, but the evil aura on your body is too strong. Even if you get the Buddha head, you will destroy it. Demonic chi? A trace of doubt appeared on Bai Juan's masked face. When he was on the mountain, he had only heard from his master that there was evil aura in people, but he had never heard of any evil aura. Being too vicious didn't mean that he had killed a lot of people. Instead, it was related to the people and things around him. Those who had no bottom line were the ones who were most prone to anger. However, he had never believed in these things from the beginning to the end. Until he adopted a Jew. There were some things that only when you met someone important would you rather believe in them than not believe in them. Thinking of this, Bai Juan's dark eyes flashed. Then he heard the voice in the room say, "The little benefactor outside should also be here for my Buddha purple jade. Why don't you come in first?" Bai Juan did not hesitate. He stepped over the steps and saw the scene in the room. In front of a wooden square table sat an eminent monk. He was wearing a monk's robe and was not very outstanding. However, the man sitting opposite him was too handsome. His skin was so fair that it seemed to be shining. He was wearing a straight black suit with a bouquet of dark red roses in the pocket of his suit. His slender hands were wrapped in pure white gloves. It was very easy to think of a movie that had once swept the world. Night Interview with the Vampire. Amitabha. The eminent monk recited a scripture to the man. Benefactor, Buddha always talks about fate. Some things can't be forced. The man lowered his eyes and curled his lips. He was still spinning a cup of tea between his fingers. Talking about fate with me? When the eminent monk heard this, his expression seemed to turn ugly for a moment. However, he was more afraid as if he had recognized the man's identity. You. Baijuan reached out and pressed the back of the eminent monk. He still wore a black mask on his face. His pitch-black eyes looked at the man, neither servile nor overbearing. The eminent monk chanted Amitabha again. Little benefactor, this old monk can't agree to what you want today. Little benefactor has nothing to do with this place. Little benefactor, you'd better leave quickly. I won't leave until I get the Buddha's head. Baijuan stood at the side. He was wearing a pure white down jacket. His figure was slender, and his aura did not weaken in the slightest. However, the eminent monk really wanted to push him out. He looked at the man opposite him warily, as if the person standing in front of him was not a human, but some kind of ferocious beast. The man only supported his chin with one hand, and looked at the eminent monk with an indifferent expression. It seems that you have already recognized me. In that case, don't waste any more time. Otherwise, I can't guarantee that no one will bleed in this room. The eminent monk knew that he was using Baijuan's life to threaten him. However, it's not that I'm unwilling to hand over the Buddha's head, but when the Buddha's head is in your highness' hands, it will be destroyed in an instant. The eminent monk put his palms together. At that time, this Buddha's head will be meaningless. He could sense that the Buddha's head was in this room, but at the same time, he could also sense that the Buddha's aura was suppressed by him a little. It seemed that this old baldy was not lying. The purple jade Buddha's head would indeed be destroyed in his hands. His Highness, who had originally wanted to bring his daughter home earlier, darkened his eyes and stood up. His eyes swept over Baijuan, who was standing at the side. The eminent monk thought that he was going to make a move, so he hurriedly moved to the side. However, His Highness did not start a massacre as he thought. Instead, he walked out of the room, as if there was no one else around. He said coldly, "Go." Many bat-like birds flew up from the beams in the room. Black feathers fluttered down. Baijuan stretched out his hand to block his eyes. When he turned around, he saw that the eminent monk seemed to have heaved a sigh of relief as he sat back on the wooden chair. Baijuan frowned. Today's matter was inevitably too strange. First of all, the road had been blocked for so long. It was snowing outside, but there was not a single trace of snowflakes on that man's body. How did he come over with such a blocked road? Moreover, what was going on with those bats? Baijuan had always been an idealist. Other than himself, he did not believe in any gods or ghosts. If it were not for a Jew, he would not even believe in Buddha's fate. However, these phenomena that could not be explained clearly with what he had learned made Baijuan doubt the identity of the man. Who was he? Chapter 12:21. Amitabha. When the monk saw that the man had left, he stood up and pushed the teacup beside him. When the teacup spun, a Buddha head the size of a pearl rose from the wooden table. Ever since my Buddha purple jade entered the world, there have always been disturbances in this world. In order to avoid this calamity, this penniless monk preached all over the world. Now that this penniless monk is old and will pass away soon, it should be handed over to someone with Buddha's fate. But now it seems that I won't be able to hold on until then. Since I've been targeted by him, it should be very difficult for me to escape. Young benefactor's righteousness is also suitable for this Buddha head. As he spoke, the monk handed the purple jade to Baijuan. Then he pressed his palms together and chanted, Amitabha. After that, he didn't say anything else. Instead, he sat there and meditated. The value of the purple jade Buddha head was very high. Vice Commander Zhang had originally prepared a large sum of money. What he didn't expect was that as soon as he came in with a small leather case, the young master had already gotten what he wanted. Baijuan glanced at him and said indifferently, "Let's go." Don't disturb the monk's rest. Vice Commander Zhang lifted the leather case. What about the money? There's no need. Bai Zhuan was the first to walk out of the courtyard. His nasal voice was still very heavy, and even his head was a little heavy. Every joint was aching, because of the heavy cold. After getting into the car, the road ahead was still blocked. Bai Zhuan wore the Buddha head on his wrist. He glanced at Master Li, who was sitting in front of him, and seemed to have thought of something. He asked, I haven't passed the car since I entered? Yes, Master Li said as he turned the steering wheel. Young master, don't be anxious. This road is indeed not easy to walk on today. I reckon that it will take us some time to get out of this road. Bai Zhuan lowered his eyes and did not say anything. He only reached out and pressed the space between his eyebrows. How did that man come here? And how did he disappear? Young master, what's wrong? Are you feeling unwell? Vice Commander Zhang asked from the side. Bai Zhuan put on his mask and looked out of the window. No, let's go back as soon as possible. Yes. Vice Commander Zhang closed the car door. They didn't know that on the mountain peak above their heads, a man in a black suit was playing with a single rose in his hand. He was looking down at the congested traffic from high above, and the corners of his mouth curved into an evil smile. That man was none other than the one Bai Zhuan had seen in the monk's room. He was also one of the 3 halls of the Devil Palace Beligaju. Behind him, there seemed to be countless clouds churning. No one could see what was hidden in those clouds. Beside him, an ancient divine beast, the fire Qilin, which looked like a lion but was 3 times the size of a lion's head, was wagging its tail and opening its mouth. Master, are we just going to give the purple jade Buddha head to this human? That was not just something that fell from Mountain Tenya. When the true Buddha reappeared in the world, he shone the Buddha's light on this purple jade, which formed the Buddha's head. Ever since she sent the little master away, the Princess Consort had been looking for this Buddha head. Master wanted to snatch the Buddha's head from Princess Consort and give her a surprise. After all, if he had it, the little master would not have to wait until the year of reincarnation to return home. As long as he wore this Buddha head, he should be able to live safely with his master and the little master. Although the little master would be filming outside for a long time to earn money to support the family. But in the past few days, he didn't know what was going on. The little master seemed to have a grudge against someone. He tortured some restless demons in the demon world several times. They wanted to get close to the little master, but they were afraid that the demonic aura on their bodies was too strong. In the end, they sat on the stone steps and pressed their phones to vent their anger. No one knew who they were sending WeChat messages to. His manager had suffered a lot. Recently, he couldn't wait to knock on the master's office door every day. Now he finally found this Buddha head. How could the master give up just like that? This was not like his usual unreasonable style at all. His surname is Bai. Beligaju retracted his gaze. As if he had seen through the fire Qilin's thoughts, he looked over. The fire Qilin seemed to tremble. Then it began to try its best to reduce its presence. Beligaju continued. Sakya and I have always been sick of each other. His remaining Buddha light will only be damaged in my hands. Since this child's surname is Bai, the Buddha head will always be in Ajiz's hands. When he sends the purple jade out, we will go to the courtyard. Beligaju crushed the petals in his hand. The floating clouds also churned. Bring Aju home. The last 5 words echoed in the valley in a low voice. No one could hear what he said. Large patches of black feathers flew up, wrapping the man and the divine beast in the middle. In the blink of an eye, there was nothing left. 12 o'clock. It was also noon. The road where Bai Zhuan was had just been cleared. However, in the schools in the city, it was the most active time for the students. Aju originally wanted to go to class, but she brought a large dog with her. In fact, not to mention the classroom, even the malls were not allowed to enter. Instead, she could take it for a walk outside the school. However, she did not know if it was Aju's imagination. She always felt that the big dog she saw today was much more obedient than that day when she saw it in the snow. Especially when her second brother looked over. Little Allah's neck would shrink a little. It was really very obedient. Aju reached out her hand and touched Alaska's big head. Her white cat was still on top of her head. Hellion Chinchin was afraid that her sister would be tired, So she said with a faint smile, "Give me the rope." "Okay." Aju thought for a moment and added, "But second brother, you have to watch little Allah. It has a bad temper and likes to bite people." Helian Chinchin smiled slightly. "Bad temper? Wah." Little Alaska immediately retracted its claws and walked beside Helian Chinchin like a cat. It looked like it wanted to be obedient and go to heaven. Seeing this, Aju felt that her second brother was simply powerful to a certain extent. She and her big brother both relied on their martial strength to win. For example, the first time she saw little Allah, she directly put on an aura of wanting to tame a beast and pounced on little Allah. Guqing should not be able to see it, but she did rely on her martial strength to crush little Allah. Unlike her second brother, it seemed that he did not need to do anything and had his own beast-taming ability. "Second brother didn't ask you yesterday." Helian Chinchin stopped and looked at Aju with a smile. "Why don't you want to go back to the Bai family today?" Just as Aju was about to speak, a familiar smile came from behind her. Aju. Behind her were her two sisters. They seemed to have dressed up meticulously. Their faces were covered in makeup, and they looked very youthful. Chapter 12:22. It was Guro. Behind her were her two sisters. They seemed to have dressed up meticulously. Their faces were covered in makeup, and they looked very youthful. Guro ran over. "Why are you still here? Didn't you go back? It's already past 12 o'clock. The birthday party will start at 4 o'clock. Do you want us sisters to bring you back?" "Birthday party? What birthday party?" Someone beside her heard Guro's words and asked softly, "Don't you know? Today is the birthday of Bai Bei. He has already applied for the afternoon leave. I heard that he is going to hold a birthday party in the courtyard." "Bai Bei's birthday party? I want to go too." "Save it. Do you think you are also a friend of Belgu? Bai Bei only invites Belgu's friends. Passers-by like us can only stand aside." Whispers could be heard coming from all directions. Aju listened quietly and did not say anything. Guro was still the same. She smiled very sweetly with her hands behind her back. She tilted her head and looked at Aju, as if she was waiting for her answer. The two girls behind her looked at the people around them and smiled at each other. It was indeed an honor to be invited by the Bai family. If it wasn't for Guro, they definitely wouldn't have been able to enter the courtyard. Although it wasn't Bai Bei who personally invited them, what was the difference between Guro and Bai Bei? Therefore, there was still a beautiful friend by their side who could go where they wanted to go. "That's right, Aju, you can go back with us." One of the girls opened her mouth and muttered, "So that school bell Bai won't have to come and pick you up later." Aju looked up and glanced at that person. The girl smiled and blinked. "Aju, I don't mean anything else. I also heard from Aro that the school bell cancelled some of the celebration projects for you. There are no games like Truth or Dare. It's just eating. When the time comes, we will all play together. Don't always be so distant from us." "Heh." Helian Chinchin looked up with a faint smile. Her tone was very slow. "Aju, and you don't even know each other. What's there to be distant from each other?" The girl choked for a moment, then sneered. "Hey, isn't this the handsome guy who rides a bicycle to school every day? We were friends with Aju's brother to begin with, so how could we not be estranged?" "Her brother?" Helian Chinchin's eyes turned cold. "Are you sure you know who her brother is?" "Of course, even if you're talking about Bai Juan. In my memory, Bai Juan doesn't even know your name. Didn't he not say a word the last time we met?" The girl was speechless again. Indeed, Colonel Bai did not even know her. At most, they had met twice. That was also because he followed Guro. Right, Guro? Hee. Our Guro is the girlfriend of Colonel Bai. Even if Bai Juan can't call out my name, everyone knows me. As she spoke, the girl raised her chin. Helian Chinchin raised her eyebrows. "In the end, someone else is Bai Juan's girlfriend. I really don't understand. What does this have to do with you? Is it worth showing off like this?" After hearing Helian Chinchin's mockery, the onlookers also covered their mouths and laughed. The girl's face was flushed red. Guro immediately helped her out. "This is my best friend. We often eat with Bai Juan and the others. We have been friends for a long time. We will often be together in the future. It's only a matter of time before we get familiar with each other." As she spoke, She looked at the big dog that Aju was holding. Aju, this Alaska is very fierce. You have to be careful. I ran over to greet you, because I wanted to get along well with you. Just like I said this morning, today is your brother's birthday. Let's not make things unpleasant. You also shouldn't interact with people he doesn't like, and make his heart feel uncomfortable. Since you don't want to go back with us, I'll get the driver to pick you up later. Your brother is busy today, so I'm afraid he won't be able to find the time. If there's anything, just call me. As soon as she finished speaking, Guro looked at the two people behind her. Let's go first. It's not suitable for a Jew to enter with a dog. Okay. The two girls nodded in unison. One of them turned around and looked at Enchanting unwillingly. The mockery in her eyes was obvious, as if saying that a poor boy dared to embarrass her. If it wasn't for a Jew's protection, if it wasn't for the fact that a Jew was the sister of Colonel Bai, they would have dealt with him long ago. Enchanting was the best at reading people. Of course, she knew what these girls were thinking. Her eyes curled up, and her lips curled into a smile. If Guro took a closer look, she would realize that the Alaska that she thought was very fierce was shrinking like a spotted wolf dog. It didn't even dare to stretch out its claws. How could a person who could make a fierce dog so afraid be a poor boy? Is it because of this reason that you don't want to go back to the Bai family? Enchanting looked at the backs of the few people, and turned her face. She smiled faintly and pressed her hand on Aju's head, rubbing it lovingly. Aju shook her head. No, they're not important. Oh. Enchanting smiled. Then why? Even second brother can't guess it. Aju's delicate little face was very cute. I don't want to always be treated like a child. The Bai family has to pay attention to a lot of details when holding a banquet. The people who come are all powerful and influential. If they bring a Jew to the banquet, they will definitely be afraid. At that time, it will also be difficult for little brother. Moreover, that's little brother's girlfriend. Everyone wants to be with the person they like on their birthday. I'm like that. So, I don't want to disturb little brother, and I don't want to make things difficult for the Bai family. Just because I only eat vegetarian food, it will make things difficult for the people around me. If I appear at the birthday party, and those girls say bad things, what if I can't help but beat them up? The main thing is that I definitely can't help it. Second brother, can you understand? It's very difficult for me not to beat people up. Enchanting listened to her sister's serious and cute expression, and the smile on her face spread from the corners of her eyes to the corners of her mouth. I can understand. Second brother can understand your feelings very well, right? Aju seemed to have found a confidant, and held her second brother's hand enthusiastically. Enchanting smiled and said, Then let's go back to my place first? When it's about time, I'll send you back to the Bai family. Aju hesitated for a moment before nodding. Okay, let's go. Enchanting glanced at the Alaskan sled dog. Follow me to get the car first. Okay. Aju said with the white cat on her head. I want to sit in the back seat with Xiaobai. Of course, Enchanting would let her sister do whatever she wanted. However, there was one thing. Other than making Baijuan anxious, it was also time to let some people know that their Aju was not to be trifled with. Chapter 12:23. Time passed by bit. Baijuan sat in the car. Due to his illness, his hat was on his head, and his mask was covered tightly. How long until we reach the city? The driver looked at the traffic flow in front of him. We should be there in about 2 hours. Don't worry, young master. We can make it in time for the start of the banquet. Baijuan didn't care if he could make it in time for the start of the banquet. Compared to this, what he wanted to do more was to push the birthday cake in front of him with a Jew. Thinking of that scene, Baijuan finally had a smile on his face. He took out the purple jade Buddha head and held it in his palm. Let's go to the school first and pick up a Jew before returning to the courtyard. Young master, in that case. Vice Commander Zhang turned his head. We might not make it in time for the start of the banquet. If the birthday boy was not present, it would be very awkward. Moreover, this birthday was different from any other. It was the young master's coming-of-age banquet. Baijuan looked out of the window and did not say anything. Obviously, he knew that something would be wrong, But these things did not seem to be important to him. Vice Commander Zhang had always known that the young master valued the young miss very much. He definitely wanted to be there with the young miss. Moreover, the young master had also told the chief that he would only show his face at the banquet for 2 hours. After that, he would take the young miss to celebrate the birthday alone. No wonder the young master kept asking about the time today. If it weren't for the young miss, he would probably only look at the trend of some technology stocks calmly in the traffic jam. Sometimes, Vice Commander Zhang really felt that the young master didn't look like a 17 or 18-year-old youth at all. He thought far more than his peers. The young master had been planning like this since he was young. Perhaps the appearance of the young miss was the only thing he didn't plan for. Vice Commander Zhang still remembered that before the young miss came to the Bai family, the young master didn't welcome the sudden addition of another person in the family. However, when the young miss walked in wearing a kasaya, the young master personally held her hand and walked in. One had to know that the young master had never been like this to other children. At that time, they all thought that the young miss was a boy and a little monk. Who would have thought that it would be a girl? From that day on, the young master doted on the child more and more. If he had to say, all the patience of the young master in his life should be spent on the young miss. In the past, even if the young master went to the temple to cultivate, he never believed in things like gods and Buddhas, until the young miss came to the Bai family. The young master bought almost all the jade Buddha statues that he could buy. For the young master, who didn't need a single cent of the family's money, it was actually not as easy as it seemed on the surface. But because of this, the young master had started to come into contact with the business circle before joining the army. In the beginning, there was a period of time when he drank a lot of alcohol. If it was the young master of the past, he would not have been able to imagine it. With the Bai family's influence, there was no need for the young master to work so hard anymore. But the young master felt that it was not enough. Perhaps this was the Bai family. Their roots were upright, and the blood that flowed in their veins was always the blood of soldiers. In their eyes, home and country were inseparable. Perhaps it was because they had passed through a small road. But after entering the national highway, the car began to accelerate significantly. Bai Zhuan's car had a good performance to begin with, and its speed was much faster than ordinary cars. 2 hours later, they arrived at the entrance of number 1 high school on time. 3:45. Bai Zhuan glanced at the time on his phone, pushed open the car door, and walked toward the office building. He wanted to apply for leave for the last class in the afternoon, before going to Aj's classroom. Aju. The form teacher of the 3rd grade raised his eyes to look at Bai Zhuan. She didn't come to class in the afternoon, and left at noon. Isn't today your birthday? She should have gone home early. A few days ago, she came to my place to apply for leave, and said that she wanted to buy you a birthday present. The teacher's words made the smile in Bai Zhuan's eyes even more obvious. Vice Commander Zhang saw that his young master seemed to have changed after going to the teaching building and coming back. He could not help but be a little surprised. What was going on? Going home. Bai Zhuan put on his mask and the corners of his mouth curled up. Vice Commander Zhang exclaimed, "Aren't you going to pick up Miss? She should be at home." Hearing Bai Zhuan's words, the driver did not hesitate anymore. He stepped on the accelerator to the end and drove into the busy traffic. The cars that entered and exited the military compound were basically of the same grade. For the Bai family's only grandson's coming-of-age ceremony, other than some people in the military compound, there would also be some huge businessmen inside. When the Hummer drove into the compound, it was already past 4 in the afternoon. The banquet was about to begin. There were many guards and bodyguards outside the compound. Everyone needed to have a guest invitation to enter. Those who did not have an invitation were all rejected at the door. The examination was very strict. The 2 girls beside Gu Rou were still saying, "Fortunately, we have Gu Rou by our side. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to enter at all." That's right. Gu Rou, when you just entered the compound, someone asked you to show your invitation. Why don't you even need an invitation when you're at the Bai family's place? Gu Rou laughed and whispered into their ear, "Look at these 2 doors. There are Gu family's bodyguards. I just need to show my face." As expected, the pavilion closest to the water enjoys moonlight first. The girl teased Guro. Guro then told the truth. Grandpa Bai and my grandfather were comrades in arms a long time ago. The two of them had a very deep relationship. However, later on, my grandfather went overseas to join the business world. Grandpa Bai was originally from a military family and had always been in the compound. It's not strange that there are people from the Gu family on Bai Xuan's birthday this time. However, when she heard that Bai Xuan had gone out early in the morning, she made some changes to the plan. Wasn't Aju so embarrassed that she didn't want to come back with her? Similarly, she didn't want to see this person at the birthday banquet either. Then when it was about time, she would get someone to let her in. Gu Rou smiled lightly and flicked her long hair. She still looked very pure and bright. Let's go in first. The banquet will start in less than 10 minutes. I'm really excited. What should I do? Why are you so excited? It's not your birthday. But speaking of which, the banquet is about to start. Why isn't Colonel Bai here yet? At this moment in the grand and luxurious Bai family mansion, exquisite dishes were already placed on the long table, as well as bottles of fine red wine. Even the outside of the courtyard had begun to light up piles of fruit trees. Whole sheep were on the rack, and knives and forks were in unlimited supply. Outside the courtyard were soldiers in military uniforms, and inside were professional chefs and waiters hired from outside. All of them were busy. It was even more textured than the banquet in the hotel. It made people look forward to it. Chapter 12:24. However, all of a sudden, the music became much quieter. The people on the other side all looked to the side. Bai Xuan was back. He had already taken off the mask on his face, revealing his well-defined face. His fine black hair hid his eyelashes, and he was as noble and cold as ever. The clothes he wore when he went out had already been changed. The woolen tassel jacket that reached his legs made him look even more handsome and tall. His rice clothes were light, and his face was fine. As soon as he appeared, he suppressed all his peers at the banquet. Old Master Bai looked satisfied, and the smile on his face became even wider. At this time, the people attending the banquet also walked up to Bai Xuan. They greeted him and laughed. I really didn't expect Bai Xuan to be so old in the blink of an eye. It's worth coming back this time. This kid has to go to my place. Why should he go to your place? He should go to my place. The Flying Tiger Brigade is suitable for our Bai Xuan. The people standing in that row were all wearing military uniforms. Bai Xuan had seen them before. Even if he was not feeling well, his face did not show anything. He smiled faintly and greeted, Uncle Li, Uncle Lu. Bai Xuan, let me tell you, you have to go to our place. To be honest, don't go to your uncle's place, okay? He trains people to take a layer off them. Li Boyan was talking about Bai Xuan's uncle, the famous demon third young master Tang. Bai Xuan smiled. Uncle Li, how could you forget again? Uncle has already retired from the army. Li Boyan was stunned and shook his head. I can only blame him for giving me too much psychological trauma when he was around. It was really not a good feeling to be scolded by someone younger than him as a rookie, and the other party's military rank was higher than his. The most important thing was that that person did not look like a soldier at all. Instead, he looked like a warlord young master from the Republic of China era. However, speaking of which, Bai Xuan did not look like he could enter the army, but in fact, that was not the case. Bai Xuan coughed lightly. Uncle Li, you guys chat first. I'll go up first. He was going to look for a Jew. From the moment he came in until now, he had not seen the child's shadow, so Bai Xuan could not help but be anxious. The strange thing was that a Jew was not even on the second floor. He searched the bedroom and kitchen, but he still could not find her. The two girls behind Gu Rou kept looking at Bai Xuan. That's strange. What is Colonel Bai looking for? Shouldn't he cut the cake first? Gu Rou narrowed her eyes and didn't say anything. Instead, she smiled. At this time, the music also changed and gradually became more passionate. Li Hailu and Xiao Lin also saw that something had happened to Bai Xuan. Both of them were wearing suits today, and were very handsome. Xiao Lin was still doing foreign policy with his mother. When he saw that Bai Xuan had no intention of cutting the cake, he looked at Li Hailu and walked over. What's wrong? Xiao Lin lowered his voice. Bai Juan suppressed the pain in his throat and said in a hoarse voice, "A Jew isn't back yet." "Not back yet?" Li Hailu frowned. "Today is such an important day. It's impossible that she doesn't know. Did she go to the courtyard to play?" Bai Juan shook his head. "No, I went upstairs to take a look. Her school bag is not in the bedroom." "What's going on?" Li Hailu raised his head and looked at the clock hanging in the living room. "Could it be that she's still in school? How about this, you cut the cake first. Xiaolin and I will go and pick a Jew up. Don't worry, we'll definitely let her spend this birthday with you alone." Bai Juan coughed again. "She's not in school either. Before I came back, I went to the teaching building. The homeroom teacher said that she had already applied for leave for today. Then where did she go?" Li Hailu was also surprised. Gu Rou listened at the side and walked over with a wine glass. She should have gone to play with Helian Qingchen. Helian Qingchen. Li Hailu's eyes suddenly widened. "That transfer student. When we came, we saw a Jew with him. We even asked a Jew if she wanted to come back with us. But she didn't agree." Yes. The two girls behind Gu Rou also spoke. Those two people were quite intimate with the dog. They should still be together now. Hearing this, Xiaolin frowned. He looked at Bai Juan with a hint of worry in his eyes. Bai Juan valued this birthday very much. The reason why he valued it was because he had already planned to spend the rest of the time alone with a Jew, except for the social interaction part. However, because a Jew was with someone else, she missed the opening of the banquet. Xiaolin's heart tightened. He was really afraid that Bai Juan would do something on this day. Li Hailu also knew the details and immediately said, "Bai Juan, do what you have to do. A Jew definitely won't forget such an important day. Maybe she's rushing over here." "Hailu is right," Gu Rou gently echoed from the side. Her snow-white long dress swayed. "No matter how young a Jew is, she knows what's more important. It's almost time to cut the cake. If we don't start now, I'm afraid she'll be anxious later." Bai Juan did not say anything. He stood there with a cold and indifferent expression. His drooping hair covered his eyes. Perhaps it was because he was sick, but at that moment, he actually made people feel that his tall and straight jade-like back was somewhat lonely. When the two girls beside Gu Rou saw this, they only felt that this Jew was really insensible. She was still having fun outside on her brother's birthday, but she did not know how to come back earlier. However, after what happened last time, they no longer dared to talk too much in front of Bai Juan. They could only stand aside obediently and be wallflowers. Vice Commander Zhang walked over from inside and whispered into Bai Juan's ear. "Young master, the chief is asking when to cut the cake?" Bai Juan still did not say anything. He stood there tall and slender. His slender fingers were clenched one by one, as if he was enduring something. Even the expression on his face had become a little cold. When Gu Rou saw this scene, the corners of her lips curled up into a smile. She had long said that the difference between a 12-year-old and a 17-year-old was more than 5 years. Two people with different thoughts were destined to not be together. A Jew's youth, ignorance had finally begun to make Bai Juan feel uncomfortable. What did she mean by liking or not liking? It was just a habit that she had developed since she was young. Gu Rou had also heard from Auntie Wang and the others that when a Jew first came to the Bai family, Bai Juan was not very welcoming. It just so happened that the child came at the right time. At that time, Bai Juan was alone at home, so it was very easy for him to develop feelings for others. It was not impossible for him to mistake that feeling for liking someone. Now, after this incident, Bai Juan would probably be completely disappointed in that child. Chapter 12:25. When Gu Rou thought of this, the corners of her mouth curled up slightly. She suppressed the joy in her heart and was about to gently persuade him. Bai Juan's deep voice sounded. "Tell grandfather to cut the cake after 9 o'clock. Let the people who come eat something and dance first." This, Vice Commander Zhang hesitated. Was it okay to suddenly change the banquet process? Bai Juan raised his head, his eyes indifferent. "A Jew is not back yet. Before she comes back, I will not cut this cake. Do as I say." Yes. Ever since that incident, young master had never been so willful again. Fortunately, he had made sufficient preparations in advance. There was only the opening of the banquet, and not the specific starting point. It would only extend the duration of the entire banquet. Vice Commander Zhang recalled that young master had hoped that the banquet would end earlier. Looking at the current situation, he could not help but worry that his body would not be able to take it. Gu Rou had never thought that Bai Xuan would actually make so many changes for such a child. Could it be that he had not heard clearly, that a Jew was with someone else now? After hearing Bai Xuan's words, Gu Rou's heart churned again and again. Even if we don't have to cut the cake, we still have to go in first. Standing here, there's no way to greet the guests. Gu Rou tried her best to smile generously. Moreover, when a Jew comes later, someone will definitely tell us. Li Hailu also wanted Bai Xuan to go in. The main reason was that although there was a bonfire in the courtyard in the middle of winter, it was still very cold. Bai Xuan was already sick. If he continued to blow in the wind outside, he would definitely have a fever. Helpless, Bai Xuan did not seem to have any intention of entering the house. When the cake is cut, I will appear. All of you can go in. This. Li Hailu stood at the side and was really anxious. Xiaolin glanced at him and lowered his voice. We have to find a Jew. Otherwise, this birthday party will never start. That's easy for you to say. Where are we going to find her? Li Hailu gritted his teeth. That Helian Qingshan is strange. She is from our school. Even your mother doesn't know her exact address. There is nothing in the file. A Jiz's phone can't be reached either. We simply have no clue. Xiaolin glanced at Bai Xuan again. Even so, we still have to look for him. At the very least, we have to try. Otherwise, no one knows how long Bai Xuan will stand outside. After hearing Deputy Zhang's reply, Old Master Bai frowned. However, in the depths of his heart, he also hoped that a Jew would accompany his grandson on this birthday. All these years, although others did not know, Old Master Bai knew very well that his grandson did not treat a Jew like an ordinary brother treating his younger sister. He treated her as his future daughter-in-law. In the past, he had reminded Bai Xuan not to always subtly want to monopolize a person. The consequences would definitely not be good. At that time, what did his grandson say? Either you don't start at all, or you spend your whole life. Old Master Bai shook his head. At that time, how old was Bai Xuan? He had already mentioned his entire life. This child had always had a plan for his life. He didn't need to worry about anything. Only feelings. People who had lost their parents tended to treat relationships differently. Sometimes, he was really worried that Bai Xuan was afraid of losing, because he had too many plans. That was why he only did not say anything, and really missed out on what he wanted. Old Master Bai's eyes darkened. He said to Deputy Zhang, "Just do as young master said. Push back the time of the cake cutting, and let people eat meat and drink first. Then, arrange for a few people to wait outside the courtyard. As soon as a Jew appears, immediately bring her over. Old Chief, don't worry. Young master has already sent people out." Deputy Zhang glanced outside the door. As long as Miss comes back, we can ensure that she enters the venue. Old Master Bai nodded and asked again, "Where's Bai Xuan?" Young master is still waiting outside. After Old Master Bai heard this, he let out a long sigh. Got it. Give him a coat. Yes. After entering the 12th lunar month, the capital would be especially cold at night. In the north, the most common thing was haze, a vast expanse of white. It also meant that the sky was completely dark. However, this did not affect the liveliness and luxury of the Bai family's mansion. There were many birthday parties like this in the upper-class society. As long as the excuse was perfect, even if the main character was not around, people could still talk and laugh. Moreover, Bai Xuan did not leave. People came and went, and they could even toast a glass of wine. This was something that these guests did not notice. From the beginning to the end, it seemed that Bai Xuan had never entered the house. He stood in front of the Bai family's door, standing straight in the middle of the white fog. For some reason, even though it was bustling with noise and excitement, it made people feel that he was actually not happy. On the other side, in a high-class apartment near number 1 high school, a Jew held a big bowl in her hand, but she did not touch a single grain of rice. Helian Qingshan sat opposite her and smiled gently. What's wrong? Is today's food not delicious? No, second brother's food is delicious. As Aju spoke, she stuffed a mouthful of rice into her mouth. She puffed up her cheeks and chewed 2 mouthfuls. Then she became a little listless. Hellion Qingchen could sense that the Buddha's aura on her body was beginning to weaken. This was a very bad sign. It seemed that he had to leave early. As expected, it was not good for his little sister to keep interacting like this. If only he could find that Buddha's head. He did not know what the situation on his mother's side was like now. Just as Hellion Qingchen was thinking, Aju suddenly stood up. Her small face was very serious. Second brother, I've thought about it for a long time, but I still feel that I should attend little brother's birthday party. Even if little brother is going to get engaged to someone else at his birthday party, I still have to go. I once promised little brother that I would accompany him on his birthday every year. Woolly Buddha said that a person must be trustworthy. I was raised by little brother, and I ate the rice of the Bai family. I can't just leave little brother alone like this. If little brother likes someone else, and really feels that I'm a burden, I can just leave when I can leave. Although I also really hope that little brother is mine, I don't want to destroy other people's feelings. After all, I'm going to be the abbot of the temple in the future. Hellion Qingchen's feelings that had just risen were destroyed by his little sister's last sentence. However, since it was what Aju wanted to do, as her brother, he naturally supported it. I'll call a car to send you back. As Hellion Qingchen spoke, he turned on the phone on the table, only to find that there was an unread WeChat message on the screen. It was actually from his father. It was simply unscientific. Chapter 1226. There was a rare fluctuation in Hellion Qingchen's eyes. She opened WeChat. There were only 5 words on it, which was very in line with her father's cold and arrogant personality. The Buddha's head is in the Bai family. After seeing this message, Hellion Qingchen suddenly paused. Then she received a second message. Get ready. The whole family is gathering. Seeing this, the corners of Hellion Qingchen's mouth completely curled up. Her eyes were clear as she patted Aju's head. Even her voice was lighter than usual. Aju, it seems that you have to return to the Bai family as soon as possible. Since the Buddha's head had already arrived at the Bai family, only Bai Zhuan would give the purple jade Buddha's head to his little sister after thinking about it. They did not have to wait until the spring festival. They could reunite at any time. Since it was a WeChat message from her father, her brother must have received it as well. Hellion Qingchen's guess was right. Bailey Shangxia had indeed received the same message. At that time, Bailey Shangxia was listening to his manager tell him about the movie script. There was also a stylist who was blowing his hair by the side. His eyes were shining, and his face was full of emotion. It was as if he had already become a fan of Bailey Shangxia. Compared to Hellion Qingchen, Bailey Shangxia had always been cold and aloof. It was as if it was that kind of innate nobility that made him so popular that whenever he appeared, people would cover their mouths and scream. At this moment, he was sitting in front of the retro bronze mirror. His left hand was supporting his chin, while his other hand was casually scrolling through Weibo. Suddenly a WeChat message came. For a moment, Bailey Shangxia did not want to open it. He did not want to see anything that his father sent him. But when he clicked on it, the expression in his dark eyes suddenly changed. Then he stood up from his seat. The gold medal manager immediately reacted. Wait a minute. Young master, what are you going to do? You still have an interview later. Have you forgotten? I haven't forgotten. Bailey Shangxia smiled and reached out to pat his manager's shoulder. That's why I'm going to have to trouble you again, old fan. What do you mean by that? The person who is going to be interviewed is you, not. No, wait. Stop him. The golden agent was about to go crazy. Regardless of his expensive suit, he rushed into the crowd with Bailey Shangxia. Just as he was about to grab hold of the young man, he saw Bailey Shangxia turn sideways and jump out of the window with one hand against the wall. He waved his hand with his back facing him. Such a neat and handsome movement was immediately captured by the reporters who were waiting to interview Bailey Shangxia. All of them swarmed over like a swarm of bees. Seeing this scene, even the best manager in the Juwei group was mentally and physically exhausted. He had to face questions from the media one after another, such as where the young master had gone, why was he in such a hurry to climb through the window, and so on. The top manager took no response as a response, and calmly maintained the cool smile on his face. In fact, he also wanted to know where his artist had gone. On the other side, Aju still didn't understand why her second brother suddenly became so happy. She had originally wanted to return to the Bai family as soon as possible. Moreover, her second brother's movements were much faster. Usually when she left, he was not like this. He would always kiss her forehead. Today, her second brother seemed to be in a hurry. She didn't know what he was going to do. Could it be that her second brother also had a girlfriend? Aju thought about it seriously and felt that it might be possible. However, Aju did not guess too much. After all, when her second brother sent her downstairs, he also said that he would be busy later and could not personally send her to the Bai family. Aju was also obedient. She held the big steamed bun that her second brother had steamed with one hand and pulled the Alaskan tightly with the other. She did not know where her second brother had called the car from. It was very big inside, and it was completely dark outside. He even dared to drive a big dog. It was just that little Allah was not so obedient after leaving Enchanting. It always stretched out its neck and wanted to jump out of the car. Aju directly hugged its big head and used force to suppress it. During this time, the driver kept looking back. Aju used her hand to rub the Alaskan's big face and said to it very seriously, "Little Allah, you can't bite people at the birthday party later. Understand? Especially you can't bite little brother. Otherwise, I can only use force to educate you. I have always been a reasonable person. If you don't bite people, I won't beat you up. Do you understand?" Alaskan, who had been ravaged, was speechless. "Let go of my head first, and then you can talk to me about reason." Moreover, after such a day of fear, it really did not have the strength to bite people anymore. Right now, it only wanted to rest on the spot. Woof! However, it was impossible to bring such a big dog into the military compound. Today was Bai Juan's birthday, and anything dangerous would be stopped. After all, the people who could appear at the banquet were all extraordinary, and there was no room for any mistakes. Time passed even faster. The fog that pervaded the night gradually revealed a tall and straight figure under the light. It was Bai Juan. He had not entered yet, as if he had been waiting for something. Vice Commander Zhang walked over quickly again. His voice was very low. "Young master, it's about time. The chief asked me to ask if it's time for you to start cutting the cake. Some people have already reached the time to leave. If we continue to wait, I'm afraid that people will have a bad impression of the Bai family." This was already the third time Vice Commander Zhang had come to urge him. He was not so anxious the first two times, but now the time was almost up. Winter was not as good as summer, and the banquet could be held until midnight. Winter was dark quickly, and the people who came here were people who had to deal with many things every time. Of course, they would not wait so long. Guru and the others came out with Vice Commander Zhang. Seeing that it was about time, they also tried to persuade him. "Why don't you go in and cut the cake first? I'll wait here. If a Jew is sent here, I'll immediately bring her in. It's already past 8 o'clock. It's better for someone else to wait here. If she could come, she would have come long ago. From the looks of it, she should still be playing outside. Bai Juan, it's better not to wait. If you continue, your body won't be able to take it. After all, a Jew is no longer a child. She knew how to come back. She was probably still with Enchanting." Guru tugged at her girlfriend, but her eyes were in agreement. "Don't talk nonsense. You guys go in. I'll wait outside with Bai Juan." "No need." Bai Juan finally opened his mouth, but it was accompanied by one cough after another. His voice was very cold and distant. "This is the Bai family's banquet. We are the ones who are waiting." Chapter 12:27. The meaning behind his words was already very obvious. In layman's terms, this group of outsiders did not have the right to interfere in the Bai family's matters. However, some girls just could not tell what was good for them. Even if they could tell, they would pretend that they did not understand in order to maintain their image. "It's okay, we'll wait with you." After the two girls finished speaking, they looked at Guru with a smile. At this moment, Gu Qing also walked out. Of course, when he saw this scene, he immediately frowned. Bai Juan had already chased them away directly enough. This was the Bai family's banquet, not anyone else's. Why were the girls around his cousin so unruly? What surprised him the most was his cousin's reaction. She actually stood there. The other two girls did not understand. When did his cousin become so unruly? Guqing put one hand in his side pocket and raised his eyebrows. Vice Commander Zhang did not have time to care about anything else. He raised his hand and looked at the watch on his wrist. His face revealed an anxious expression. Young master? Bai Juan did not move. He lowered his eyes and looked at the purple jade Buddha head in his palm. His fingers slowly clenched. There were still fireworks in the courtyard that he had bought to celebrate his birthday with the Jew. There was a whole wheat yogurt ice cream cake in the fridge. It was no longer fresh even now. His phone kept ringing, reminding him that the ship he had booked had already passed the time. Shaolin watched from the side and knew what was going on. He lowered his voice and said, "No matter what, let's go cut the cake first. When a Jew comes back, we can make up for the rest." Bai Juan glanced at him and said indifferently, 5 minutes. If she doesn't come back in 5 minutes, I'll go in again. Shaolin knew that this was Bai Juan's limit. He looked at Vice Commander Zhang and gestured for him to go in and make preparations first. He called 2 more people over and asked them to go out and inquire again. Little did he know that in order to bring Alaska into the courtyard, a Jew had directly avoided all eyes and ears. She was familiar with the layout of the courtyard and took small forks in the road. However, for safety, she still did not bring Alaska into the Bai family. Instead, she tied it not far from the Bai family and even placed a small wooden board across Alaska's mouth. This way, you won't be able to bite people. When I see little brother, I'll bring him to see you. A Jew clapped her hands. There was still a fallen leaf on her head, and her small face was not so clean. But even so, she was still exquisite and beautiful, especially her big eyes that were bright. The Alaskan Malamute lay on the ground with its 2 claws. It was a very sad thing to meet a master whose strength was off the charts. Thinking of how mighty and domineering it was before, anyone who saw it would be scared witless. Now that it had walked so far, even its teeth were blocked. A Jew was still very good to the big dog. She opened a bottle of water for it and let it lick it when it was thirsty. Then she gave half of her steamed buns to it. She held the other half of the big steamed buns in her mouth and walked towards the Bai family with her school bag on her back. Only then did a Jew realize that the 2 uncles standing outside had changed. That person saw a Jew walking over and lowered his eyes to look at her. "Miss, please show me the Bai family's invitation." "Invitation card?" A Jew frowned. "I don't have an invitation. Where are Uncle Zhang and the others? Why aren't they outside?" "I'm sorry, Mississippi. If you don't show us the invitation card, we won't let you in. Please understand," that person continued. A Jew rubbed her head and was about to find a new place to climb the wall to enter. She saw the people sent by Bai Juan walking over from 4 directions at the same time. They even had Bluetooth headphones in their ears. When they saw her, even their eyes lit up. "Miss, you're finally back. Quick, follow us in. Young master is still waiting for you." Hearing this, the 2 people standing guard looked at each other. It was strange. The eldest miss had never told them that there was another miss in the Bai family. However, the few special forces soldiers glanced at the people standing guard. "You don't even recognize Miss Aju? Hurry up and get out of the way." This time, the 2 people did not dare to delay any longer and immediately got out of the way. A Jew walked in with a steamed bun in her mouth. From afar, she saw Bai Juan's figure and many friends behind him. Those people seemed to be saying something to him. "Bai Juan, if you don't go in now, there won't be enough time." The little brother did not say anything. He only coughed heavily. A Jew immediately ran over, afraid that he had caught a cold. When she got closer, she realized that she did not know how long he had been standing under the tree. He seemed to be a little different from usual. He was not as proud and elegant as before. His lips and eyes were a little haggard, and the bottom of his eyes was a little dark. His thick black hair seemed to be stained with night dew, and it was slightly damp. "Little brother," a Jew called out to Bai Juan. Only then did Bai Juan seem to have come back to his senses. He strode over and stared at her without moving. He did not look very happy either. The air was very quiet. Other than the rustling sound of the wind, there was nothing else. Vice Commander Zhang came out to urge him again. However, when he saw that a Jew was also there, his expression clearly changed. He was really thankful. Young master, since Miss is back, you should follow me in first. You still have to prepare for the speech. Bai Juan nodded and lowered his eyes. She did not know what he put on her wrist. A Jew only felt that the thing was cold. It was very comfortable when it was pressed against her skin. It was warm and jade-like. It was probably describing this kind of touch. When she raised her head again, she only saw Bai Juan's back. The little brother did not seem to want to talk to her, nor did he want to ask where she had gone. Even if the little brother did not say anything, a Jew could feel that Bai Juan did not want to speak this time. The banquet in the house had finally reached its most lively moment. In the house, the magnificently decorated hall was already filled with people. Congratulatory voices could be heard from time to time. Gu Rou glanced at a Jew. After everyone entered the inner residence, she held a wine glass and leaned over. Her tone was gentle. A Jew, I was worried that you wouldn't come. I was so anxious. Fortunately, you came at the last moment. Don't blame your brother for being so cold to you just now. In order to wait for you to come, he even pushed back the time to cut the cake by a few hours. If it weren't for Grandpa Bai, this banquet would definitely have ended on bad terms. Bai Juan was also anxious. That's why he was like this. That's right. The two girls next to Gu Rou also walked over and advised her earnestly. A Jew, you have to be more sensible in the future. You don't know how ugly Colonel Bai's expression was just now. Adjutant Zhang even came out to call him a few times. You're right. It's good that you just came back with us. But you just had to go and play with others. Not only did you delay things, but you even made everyone wait for you. Look at how you're dressed now. You really don't look like a child. It's not good if others see you later. After all, you're Bai Juan's sister. Chapter 12:28. Hearing this, a Jew lowered her eyes and looked at her own clothes. Although there were no proper decorations, they were very clean and decent. There was nothing wrong with them. Don't say any more. I heard from Grandpa Bai that a Jew is usually very sensible and saves money. After all, she knows that her surname is not Bai, so it's good to do this. As soon as Gu Rou finished speaking, the two girls widened their eyes and looked at a Jew in disbelief. There was something else in their eyes. So her surname is not Bai. No wonder. Gu Rou smiled lightly. Even if her surname is not Bai Juan treats her no differently from his own sister. Right, a Jew? A Jew did not say anything. Her small body stood there and told herself 3 times not to hit people casually. She scooped up a glass of fruit juice and lowered her head to drink it. In between her actions, the Buddha head that Bai Juan had put on her wrist was revealed. Gu Rou also saw that item, and the jealousy in her eyes was more than surprise. That was the purple jade Buddha head that even her grandfather wanted. It was said that it was very expensive and had reached a certain level. She still remembered that when she first met Bai Juan had come into contact with her grandfather because of the Buddha head and the project. The reason why he had agreed to accompany her shopping seemed to have something to do with this Buddha head. However, she had always thought that he wanted this thing for his own use, or to give it to Grandpa Bai. Gu Rou had never thought that he would give such a valuable thing to a child so casually. Her eyes darkened. Gu Rou pretended to be surprised, but her voice was very low, afraid that others would hear her. This thing. I have one too. A Jew, this is a gift from your brother, right? He's just so lazy. He saw what I like and bought it for you. When a Jew heard this, she frowned and lowered her head to look at her wrist, but her eyes were very dark. This was specially picked for me by little brother. I can feel it. Gu Rou did not expect that her words would be useless to this child. It should not be like this. After so many days, shouldn't she have some self-awareness by now? It is indeed different. Gu Rou was smart because she knew how to retreat. Mine is not this color. The details are also different. It's just that they are all Buddha heads. I'm the same as Bai Juan. It's okay to look at them, but I'm not very used to wearing them. Unlike a Jew, who is still young and suitable to wear these things. Guro, stop talking about a Buddha statue. Tell me, what did you prepare for Colonel Bai? One of the two girls obviously didn't want to talk to a Jew after knowing her identity. She pulled Guro and said, I heard that other than the watch we bought together, you have an additional surprise for Colonel Bai. A faint smile appeared on Guro's gentle and moving face. Well, I can't tell you yet. You'll know after we cut the cake. Bai Juan has always wanted this thing. Grandfather asked me to personally give it to him. I don't know what he was thinking. He definitely wants you to send yourself out as well. The two girls jokingly pushed her. Don't worry, our senior Bai definitely won't refuse. You're so beautiful, and have so many betrothal gifts. Whoever marries you will be unhappy, right? Guro's face was red. Don't talk nonsense. What betrothal gifts? If you continue to be like this, I won't talk to you anymore. You're even shy. A Jew listened to the conversation between these people and glanced at the purple jade Buddha head on her hand. If the little brother really confirmed his relationship with Guro in a while, her little Allah probably wouldn't need to be sent off. Perhaps it was really because she was too young that she was treated as a child again and again. In fact, the little brother didn't have to worry about her at all. She wouldn't cry because of such a thing, even if it was very uncomfortable. She also knew that no matter what the little brother did, his original intention had never been to hurt her. However, what she said to her second brother was true. She always wanted to beat people up. At that time, she would make things difficult for the little brother again. Now, the little brother had already delayed time in order to wait for her. Therefore, she couldn't be insensible anymore. However, could it be an illusion? The smell of meat that used to be very unpleasant was very faint today, as if it was isolated by something. Instead, the smell that entered her nose was replaced by a faint sandalwood smell. A Jew was very familiar with that smell. When she used to live in the temple and read in the morning, she would often smell it. Every time her master began to recite the scriptures, 3 incense sticks would be lit in the hall of great strength. Her senior brother would knock on the wooden fish, while she sat beside her senior brother and meditated. At that time it was this smell. A Jew wrinkled her little nose. The smell was faintly discernible, and was not easy to catch. The strange thing was that the people around them did not smell anything. The topic of discussion of the ladies changed from Bai Juan to Guro. A Jew was small to begin with. Now that she was standing to the side, she was indeed ignored. In addition, there were already many guests here. Other than Bai Juan, who stayed behind to protect her, the others had indeed placed their gazes on Guro, who was wearing a white sandwoven dress. It was not because of anything else, but because they had also heard that the Bai and Gu families were going to have a get-together. Of course, this news was a little untrue, but after all, they were of similar age, so it might really be possible. They were all in the same circle. In addition, Guro was old Master Gu's granddaughter, so the frequency of her being praised was naturally high. Old Master Gu is really lucky to be able to raise such an outstanding granddaughter. That's right. Don't you see what kind of background the Gu family has? I wonder if she has a boyfriend. I really want to go over and get to know her. Alright, you don't even have to think about it anymore. That's the school belle of our second high school. She's a couple with young Master Bai. They're such a good match. Although they haven't confirmed their relationship yet. Do you think you can compare to young Master Bai? Brother, save it. Guro listened to the discussions beside her. Not only did she not stop them, but the corners of her mouth curled up into a smile. Then she walked to Aju's side. Aju, your brother is going to speak in a while. Did you buy any gifts for him? Over there is the gift pool. If you have them, it's best to put them there, so that your brother can open them later. Aju did not say anything. Gu Cheng saw her face through the crowd. He strode over with a wine glass in his hand. Little Bean, why are you only here now? You only know how to drink. Aju has been here for a while. She didn't bring anything with her, so I reminded her to put the gifts, Guro said with a faint smile. Gu Cheng raised his eyebrows. Indeed, you should put the gifts. Little Bean, where are the lighters you bought for your brother? Lighters? One of the girls heard this and laughed softly. Aju, it's your brother's birthday. You gave him a lighter. This is too embarrassing. Chapter 1229. Shao Dai. Guro interrupted the girl. A Jew is still a junior high school student. What kind of expensive gift do you want her to buy? The gift is light, but the sentiment is heavy. There's nothing wrong with a lighter. Shao Dai stuck out her tongue. She was quite mischievous. She turned her eyes to a Jew and said, "A Jew, I don't mean anything else. Don't take it to heart. However, the gift we gave you is indeed incomparable to Guro's. The gift she gave to your brother is very valuable. All of them are limited edition. No matter how limited edition it is, it can't compare to liking." Gu Qing curled his lips. "Alright, you guys can go somewhere else. It's boring to talk about this." Guro smiled. "You're so protective of a Jew. Be careful that Bai Juan, as her brother, won't be willing." "Sister." Gu Qing looked up at her and said meaningfully, "Don't always do these unnecessary things. Your goal is Bai Juan, isn't it?" Guro paused for a moment and smiled faintly without saying anything. She knew that her cousin had always been smart and was very accurate in seeing things. He probably heard what she said just now and knew that a Jew was not Bai Juan's biological sister. Only then did he realize something. But this was nothing. The Gu family was the same. They were always selfish. They had to protect what they wanted, just like what Gu Cheng was doing now. "Alright," Guro said to her best friends behind her. "Let's go over. I still have something to give to Bai Juan." The two girls smiled at the same time and walked together hand in hand. However, they did not forget to leave a sentence. "The adopted ones are so shabby and short-sighted. Why did they prepare a lighter on such an occasion? Don't say any more. Didn't you see that young Master Gu is unhappy? Who cares what she gives? Anyway, in name, she is Senior Colonel Bai's sister. She won't be despised. I still feel that a lighter is not something to be taken out at all. So let's wait and see what Guro is going to give to Senior Colonel Bai so that we can be amazed." Guro looked back and smiled. "You guys are really convinced. If I don't tell you, are you going to keep talking like this? You can leak a little bit to us." The girl's voice was low. "Speak softly so that no one else will know." Guro seemed to be helpless against them. She first glanced at a Jew, then whispered something into the ears of the two girls. The two girls' eyes lit up. How much is this?" "It's not about money, it's not about money." Guro smiled faintly. "Bai Juan has always wanted it." The two girls nodded. "Indeed, it's not just money. This is real power. Senior Bai will definitely be very happy. Of course, on this point, I still know Bai Juan quite well." Guro held her wine glass and laughed. As she talked, she would always let a Jew hear it. A Jew did not feel that the lighter was inferior to the other gifts. Although she also planned to give her little brother an Alaskan sled dog. These things were not worth telling anyone other than her little brother. As for the question of what these people were talking about, she didn't consider it at all. But there was one thing that Gu Cheng was right about. No matter how limited edition it was, it couldn't compare to the little brother's liking. In the past, a Jew was sure that the little brother would be happy after seeing the things she gave him. But on such an occasion, she didn't seem to be confident anymore. She had always known that she was very stupid. It was different from what others thought. Just as many people said, she didn't know what to worry about. From the moment she left the mountain until now, the little brother had helped her deal with many things. However, was the world she knew really the real world? Would the little brother also feel that if she continued to be so stupid, he would be very tired? After all, this birthday party had indeed been changed for her. "Little White, do you think I've really become little brother's burden?" A Jew picked up the little white cat that was following behind her and unconsciously rubbed her cheek against its soft little head. She also said in a low voice, she really missed the time when she was with her second brother now. Her second brother never seemed to think that she was stupid. In fact, her little brother was also like this when he was young. Was it just because he had grown up? A Jew was not sure. Standing in the midst of the bustling crowd, she muttered to herself in a low voice, "Why am I only 12 years old? I really want to grow up quickly." At this time, just outside the military compound, a limited edition sports car drove quickly. With the sound of brakes, the car steadily stopped by the side. There were 3 people sitting in the sports car. Other than Elle, who was driving, the other people were holding a laptop. Their hands were typing quickly on the keyboard, and the screen was the interface of the Bai family's banquet. In fact, he could even hear the conversation inside. It turned out that before Aju left, Hellion Qingshan had installed a small miniature camera on her fluffy rabbit hat. Not only could it record, but it could also restore the sound. Hellion Qingshan was sitting at the back of the car. Her slender and fair fingers were playing with the phone that Aju had left behind. She had almost heard the entire process of her little sister entering the Bai family's banquet. "Are you kidding me? How dare you look down on our little princess so much?" Monkey was about to go crazy. Fuck, why couldn't a lighter work? Who didn't use a lighter when smoking? And was that guy very rich? Was he as rich as the boss? Was this forcing them to compete with their parents? No, the little princess didn't need to compete with her parents at all. She could beat this guy by a whole street. Also, those two girls who came out of nowhere were so mean. Monkey was so angry that he exploded. He slapped his laptop. "I really want to destroy her." Elle dismantled the steel pipe in his hand and put it back together. He was especially direct. "Are we going in? Boss and the others aren't here yet." Monkey scratched his head. "And before we came, Boss said that after the Buddha's head is on the little princess, it will take an hour for it to completely fuse." When Elle heard this, he frowned. Could it be that they were just going to wait and do nothing? "Uncle Monkey." Suddenly Hellion Qingshan, who was sitting at the back of the car, spoke. He put down the monitoring headphones in his hand, and his eyes darkened. His voice was particularly cold. "Let's blackmail the Gu family first, and let them lose some of their property. Be careful not to leave any traces. Brother L, you go in with me. It doesn't matter if the two of us get close to Aju. There are still more than 20 minutes before Father and the others will arrive. We can't let those people say whatever they want at this point." Chapter 12:30. After Elle heard this, a cold glint flashed across his black eyes. It was as if he could not hold it in any longer. He immediately picked up his long gun and followed Hellion Qingshan out of the car. Bang! The two of them got out of the car and walked towards the military compound. They were both wearing pure black clothes and looked very cool. However, Hellion Qingshan was wearing a knee-length trench coat with a pure white shirt inside. In the night, he looked more dangerous than usual. His long sleeves were fluttering in the wind. In the fog, with Monkey as a cover, the two of them changed their figures. They pulled the rope and jumped into the courtyard. Their movements were very fast. Their skills were even more professional than the special forces. They did not make a single sound. Moreover, they knew this military compound very well. If others wanted to enter, it would be very troublesome. However, this kind of thing could be settled in minutes for the ghost organization. After entering the compound, they were outside the Bai family. The two people sent by Gu Rou were still guarding the entrance. When they saw that someone had come, they immediately asked Hellion Qingshan and the others to take out their invitation letters. Their attitude was very tough. "You are not allowed to enter without an invitation letter." Hearing this, Hellion Qingshan only tilted her head and smiled. The corners of her mouth curled up. Then, she reached out and grabbed the other party's neck in a flash. With a creak, she quickly finished off the two people. Although they only fainted from the pain, they did not have the slightest chance to call for help. As the corner of the black trench coat fell, Elle cleaned up the aftermath. He dragged one of them in each hand and directly threw them into the darkness. "You want to stop me with just the two of you?" Hellion Qingshan put one hand in her pocket and looked down at the two black shadows lying in the grass. The corners of her mouth curled up, filled with a coldness that Aju had never seen before. Then, she turned her head and said to Elle with a cold face, "Let's go." In the Bai family's room, the music in the hall became louder and louder. Everyone was chatting happily. Most people's gazes were still following Gu Rou's changes. They were generally hoping to hear more shocking news after the birthday banquet ended. Aju did not say much. She sat silently in her seat with a drink in her hand. She was exceptionally obedient. Finally, when she drank her second cup, the little brother appeared. Bai Juan, who had changed his clothes, did not seem to be as tired as before. His noble and handsome face was as cold as ever. Everyone stood up one after another, Baizhuan took the red wine from the waiter at the side, and a faint smile appeared on the corner of his lips. I've made everyone wait for a long time. I'm very grateful that all of you can take time out of your busy schedules to attend my birthday party. I'll toast to all of you first. As soon as he finished speaking, Baizhuan raised his head and drank the wine in his hand in one gulp. Then, he handed the wine glass to the waiter and said indifferently, "Today, 14 years ago, I got off the plane. For a long time, I felt that it would be very difficult to do things in the future. In fact, for so many years, uncles have always been very good to me. In the future, I will complete everything that my father taught me back then. I also hope that uncles will not show mercy when training me. My father used to say that only when there is a country can there be a family. I will be like uncles and become a responsible member of the Bai family." After Baizhuan finished speaking, he raised his glass again. The reaction at this time was different because all the soldiers present, no matter how great their titles were, knew that what happened on the plane was not an ordinary plane accident. It was Baizhuan's parents who sacrificed themselves to save the passengers on the plane. Baizhuan's father was a very admirable soldier, and Baizhuan had obviously inherited this kind of spirit that could not be described with words. The older one was, the more they knew what kind of spirit it was. It was never just a casual remark. There was such a person who could clearly live a more comfortable and relaxed life, but for the sake of protecting his family and country, he gave up many direct shortcuts. Perhaps this was the Huaxia soldiers. The inheritance that had fused into their blood did not seem to be changed by anything. A burst of applause erupted in the hall because of Baizhuan's words. It was all given to this child by the old commanders who wanted to retire. Old Master Gu stood in the middle, admiring it while nodding gently. His old face was full of a satisfied smile, as if he was very satisfied with Baizhuan. Then, he glanced at Gu Rou and asked the person beside him to pass the thing to his granddaughter. Leaning on the dragon-headed walking stick in his hand, a hint of kindness appeared between his brows. "Go. Baizhuan has always wanted this document. I always delayed giving it to him. Such a time is the most suitable to give him the birthday present he likes the most. That kid Baizhuan will definitely be happy." Under the envious gazes of her friends, Gu Rou blushed and softly nodded. Then, she dragged the hem of her white dress and walked towards Baizhuan's position. She had long said that she knew Baizhuan as well as she knew herself. People like them were born to like power. Baizhuan and her were the most perfect combination. Since that child always refused to believe it, then she would let her see with her own eyes what the gap between them was. From the moment Gu Rou walked towards Baizhuan, the gazes of all the guests in the room moved casually towards her. The atmosphere of the birthday banquet instantly reached a new height. "Isn't that the Gu family's girl? What does she want to do? Could it be a confession? Oh my God, so romantic." The two girls who followed Gu Rou also clenched their hands tightly. They looked at the scene in front of them excitedly, looking forward to the next development. On the other hand, Baizhuan, who was standing tall and straight, did not see anyone walking towards him at the beginning. He had his back facing Gu Rou the entire time. His eyes were looking at the crowd, as if he was looking for someone. Then, after he heard the discussions of the crowd, he turned his head. At this moment, Gu Rou had already walked to his side with a document in her hand. Baizhuan lowered his eyes. A faint cold light flashed through his bottomless eyes. Gu Rou was wearing a pure white and fresh gauze dress. Her soft long hair draped over her shoulders, and her head was decorated with some bright stars, making her look like a gentle angel. Following the laughter around her, Gu Rou smiled gently. "Baizhuan, this is the Gu Corporation contract you've always wanted. I'm giving it to you as your birthday present. I hope you like it." As soon as she finished speaking, the hall burst into an uproar. At this moment, Gu Rou seemed to have become the focus of everyone's attention. Even if a Jew did not know anything, she knew how precious this gift was. Seeing this, a Jew was stunned. Her big round eyes dimmed a little. Before Baizhuan could answer, she heard an unusual commotion coming from behind her. Chapter 1231. Then, a Jew saw her little brother's face turn cold. "Gu Rou Li Hailu. and the others all widened their eyes. At this time, she seemed to have realized something. She suddenly turned her body and followed everyone's gaze to the door. There was a youth who was as calm as the wind standing in the light. His windbreaker fluttered in the wind, and the corners of his mouth were slightly curved. His smile was very beautiful. It was bright and clean like water poured down from the sun, as if it could sweep away all the grievances in the depths of one's heart. Second brother, a Jew called out from the bottom of her heart. After a short trot, she directly ran in front of Enchanting. She seemed to be extremely happy. Her two cat ears stood up, and her eyes, which were dim just now, were filled with light. Why was second brother here? Didn't he say that he was busy? Li Hailu also wanted to ask this question. Enchanting, why are you here? He did not remember sending an invitation to this guy. Enchanting smiled, and a faint arc appeared on her beautiful lips. I'm here to deliver a gift on behalf of a Jew. Deliver a gift? Li Hailu snorted coldly. If a Jew has a gift, will a Jew give it herself? Do I need to give it to you? As he spoke, he walked over. Although he did not make a move, his eyes were fixed on Enchanting's face. Enchanting had no intention of retreating at all. His long and thick eyelashes drooped down, forming a dark shadow. His entire person gave people the impression that he had a kind of indifferent feeling. The atmosphere between the two of them was obviously not right. Old Master Bai, who was dressed in a military uniform, looked at this scene and frowned slightly. Immediately, an adjutant walked over and came to Enchanting's side. When a Jew saw that the adjutants had moved, her ears pricked up. She turned to the side and stood in front of Enchanting, looking at the other party with a firm gaze. When the adjutants saw that a Jew was protecting that person, they were stunned for a moment and could not help but look at their young master. Bai Juan's eyes had already followed a Jew's movements, and they were extremely cold. His pair of dark eyes were deep, unlike his usual self. Shaolin watched worriedly from the side. He turned to the side and whispered to Enchanting, if you want a fight, we can accompany you any day, but not today. Today is Bai Juan's birthday. All the guests are here. It's not suitable for us to be tit for tat. If you cause trouble here, the person who will be in trouble in the end will only be a Jew. After Enchanting heard this, she laughed softly. Shaolin, I just said that I'm here to deliver the gift on behalf of a Jew. You can continue with your business. Don't worry about me. I don't care about you. What's the meaning of your high-profile appearance? Li Hailu really wanted to grab Enchanting by the collar and interrogate her. However, he had to restrain himself. It would not be good to make a move on Bai Juan's birthday party. Guro looked at this scene and said with a faint smile, a Jew? Your friend doesn't have an invitation, right? Why did he come just like that? I don't even know how to continue delivering the gift. A Jew narrowed her big eyes and glanced in Guro's direction. She silently recited 3 times, not to beat people up, before reaching out to grab Enchanting's hand. Enchanting did not have the time to fight with Guro in the past, but now it was different. Who said I don't have an invitation? Enchanting looked at the purple jade Buddha head on a Jew's wrist, and the corners of her mouth revealed a meaningful smile. The 2 girls beside Guro laughed one after another, and there was obvious ridicule in their voices. You really dare to brag. Aren't you afraid that the wind will blow your tongue off? Who are you? Are you worthy of the Bai family sending you an invitation? Stop dreaming, okay? When the surrounding guests heard this, all of them turned to look at Enchanting. They tilted their heads and began to discuss. Old Master Bai's face also lost its usual kindness. However, it was not directed at Enchanting. It was just that he did not like the words of these 2 juniors. It was too unpleasant to hear and too sarcastic. A Jew felt that she was about to lose control of the primordial power in her body. Even Buddha Wuli's guidance was about to be useless. She looked at Bai Juan again. Yes, she looked at him again. Otherwise, she would really pounce on him and beat him up. Bai Juan's eyes were also looking at her. It could also be said that from the beginning, he had been looking for a Jew. However, he did not expect that when he found her, she would directly run to another person's side. Enchanting. Ever since this person appeared, he had already started to lose her. Until now, He was extremely sober as he watched himself sink into depravity. When the pain reached a certain point, it was the ruthlessness that he no longer wanted to let go. "Aju, come here." Baizhuan suddenly opened his mouth. Perhaps it was because he had not recovered from his cold, but his voice was hoarse and cold. Aju did not move. She knew that if she moved, Baizhuan would definitely deal with her second brother. She could see it. "I'll say it again. Come here." Baizhuan saw that she did not even have the slightest intention of returning to his side. His throat, which was already red, seemed to have been burned by a fire. It was so painful that he was covered in cuts and bruises. Aju glanced at Baizhuan, and then looked at Gu Rou, who was standing not far away from him. She remembered the scene where that person wanted to give her a gift, and shook her head silently. This time, Baizhuan could not even feel the pain. His eyes were like water. He just looked at the small face that he had raised since she was young. His chest was so stuffy that it almost made him feel uncomfortable to even breathe. "For him, you don't even listen to Baizhuan's words?" Baizhuan's voice was very hoarse, as if it was being ground out from his throat. Aju opened her mouth, as if she wanted to say something. Her voice was as gentle as a trickling stream, as if she was the other host of the banquet. She said warmly, "All right, let's not talk about it anymore. Since you're Aju's friend, it doesn't matter if you have an invitation or not. It's a good thing that you can come. Let's continue to give gifts. Didn't Aju also have a gift for your friend to give to your little brother? Why don't you take it out and take a look?" "Yeah, Aju, where's your lighter? Hurry up and give it to your brother." The two girls laughed again. "However, you have to ask your friend for help to give a lighter. This is making a mountain out of a molehill." Heli and Qingchen listened to these mocking words and smiled lightly. "Who told you that the gift I want to give on behalf of Aju is a lighter?" "What else?" Gu Rou also smiled and pointed out. "Qingchen, we are very clear about your family situation, so it's better to do what you can with gifts." The two girls were even more disapproving. "What gift is so nice to hear? Who knows how shabby it might be? Aju, this friend you found to give you a gift is too unpresentable." Chapter 1232. When Aju heard this, she immediately clenched her fists. Her entire body was in a state of battle readiness. She was like a little tiger that was about to stretch out her claws and bite. At this moment, an evil and arrogant voice suddenly sounded from the door. "Who said that my brother is not presentable?" It was just a short moment. The hall fell into a dead silence. Everyone seemed to be holding their breaths, especially the female guests present. Whether they were adults or not, their faces were filled with uncontrollable excitement. Heli and Qingchen did not need to turn around to know who had come. The corners of her mouth were half curved as she looked in Gu Rou's direction. "The birthday present that I wanted to give on behalf of Aju has arrived." For some reason, that half smile that did not show her teeth actually made Gu Rou feel a chill down her spine. At this moment, the slender figure that could gather all the resplendent light had already walked in. He placed his left hand on Heli and Qingchen's shoulder in a very beautiful posture. His fair skin was glowing like a vampire noble, and the corners of his mouth carried a unique viciousness that could make countless girls infatuated with him. It was luxurious, dark, and enough to topple a city. A strand of silver hair hung down and blocked his eyes, as if his face could not be seen clearly. But even so, people could also recognize him. That was Bailey Shangxia, the real-life version of Bailey Shangxia. This thought swept through all the women present like a storm, including the two girls who had just mocked Heli and Qingchen. After all, Bailey Shangxia did not seem like an ordinary idol star. Every drama he filmed, the characters created would be hailed as classics. Not to mention the 16 or 17-year-old students. Even the older rich ladies present had always been fascinated by the role he played. Bailey Shangxia's ability to charm people could not be described with words. In addition, everyone knew what kind of background he had. The young director of the Juwei Group held the economic lifelines of countless industries in his hands. Such a person actually said that Heli and Qingchen was his younger brother? The faces of the two girls who had been smug suddenly lost all color. Without a doubt, they were all fans of Bailey Shangxia, and they liked Bailey Shangxia very much. Even the screen of their phones was Bailey Shangxia's photo. But what did they just do? They actually insulted the young master's most beloved younger brother. All the fans knew that Bailey Shangxia cared about his younger brother the most. Even when he grew up, the title of his brother Guomin had not been removed. But how did things turn out like this? Didn't that Enchanting have no background? How did he become the young master's younger brother? Gu Rou's expression also began to turn ugly. She originally wanted to use Enchanting, this poor boy, to make things difficult for a Jew. However, she did not expect that she would accidentally provoke the people from Ju Wei group. What should she do now? How was she going to smooth things over? Gu Rou clenched her fists anxiously. Bailey Shangxia's appearance was undoubtedly like throwing a huge rock in the hall. Even Li Hailu and Xiaolin's expressions turned blank for a moment. What was going on? Why did Bailey Shangxia come here? How did he become Enchanting's brother? Questions that they could not even think of before popped up one after another. They only felt that something seemed to be out of their control. It seemed that this time things were really a little complicated. Only a Jew was very happy. She held the little white cat in her hand and looked at Bailey Shangxia with her small face. It was really the first time she had seen him. It was the first time she had seen her big brother in person. Her big brother and second brother were completely different. They were clearly both born by her mother. A Jew was overjoyed, so her thoughts were a little incoherent. Bailey Shangxia also lowered his head and met his little sister's big eyes that were as clear as water. He looked at the small Jew. Bailey Shangxia endured it again and again before he controlled his hand and did not pick up his little cute thing. He was afraid that if he touched his little sister, she would feel uncomfortable. A Jew did not care if her big brother hugged her or not. She raised a pair of small ears and a beautiful little face. She quietly reached out and grabbed Bailey Shangxia's sleeve. The three siblings were finally standing together. Bailey Shangxia's hand was still on Enchanting's shoulder. A Jew stood in front of her second brother, looking very cute. With the smiling Enchanting as the center, the three of them stood in the middle of the hall. Each of them had their own characteristics, and each of them made people unable to take their eyes off them. When combined, they looked like a scene from a comic. Just now, someone thought that I was too shabby, so they questioned me and asked if I had received an invitation from the Bai family. Enchanting said with a faint smile. So if my brother didn't appear, I would actually be looked down upon like this. It's just because I rode a bicycle to school. Girls nowadays are really powerful. Don't you think so, Miss Gu? Gu Rou, who was named, froze. She could feel many gazes shooting in her direction. This made her want to find a hole to hide in. Enchanting ignored her and looked at old Master Bai. I remember that old Master Bai sent 4 invitations to our family. He even mentioned on the invitations that he hoped my mother could bring us along to attend. That's right. Old Master Bai's laughter was heard. It was still bright and clear. I didn't expect that girl's child to be so big. Good, really good. Enchanting smiled again. Thank you for your concern, old Master Bai. My family has always been unexpected. At this point, he lowered his head to look at his little sister in front of him. Old Master Bai saw that the doting look in his eyes was not hidden at all. He thought that this child had also fallen in love with a Jew. He turned around and looked at his grandson worriedly. Enchanting continued. This time, our whole family came here not only to congratulate young Master Bai on his birthday, but also for one more thing. Chapter 1233. There's one more thing? Old Master Bai couldn't think of anything else. He frowned. What's the other thing? I want to take up some of your time. I want to talk about that matter later. Enchanting laughed. Before that, I really want to ask Miss Gu, why are you so sure that the things I give a Jew are not valuable? Old Master Gu could not sit still at this moment. He leaned on the dragon-headed walking stick in his hand and looked at his granddaughter worriedly. Fortunately, Gu Rou reacted quickly. A moment ago, her fingers were still clenched tightly. The next moment, a gentle and moving smile appeared on her face. Her long dress swayed like an angel, and her face was full of sincerity. You misunderstood. I didn't mean that. It's just that a Jew told us just now that she wanted to give her little brother a lighter, So I thought that you were giving her these little things. After all, she's still a child and doesn't have much money. At this point, she looked at Aju with her beautiful eyes. Aju, say something for Sister Ro. Didn't you say that you wanted to give your little brother a lighter? If you don't say anything, your friend will misunderstand Sister Ro. Misunderstand? Without waiting for anyone to react, Bailey Shangxia suddenly moved. He smiled viciously and lowered his eyes to look at Gu Ro. His handsome face was clearly written with the word bloodthirsty. I think you're the one who misunderstood. Who told you that Aju doesn't have much money? Looking at his expression, Gu Ro was shocked, but she bit her thin lips. That forbearing look made people feel sorry for her. Forget it. Since Aju doesn't want to say it, then I can only defend myself. In fact, Aju is not a member of the Bai family. As soon as Gu Ro said this, everyone's reaction was different. Especially Bai Juan. His knife-like gaze shot toward Gu Ro, and his voice was extremely cold. Who said that Aju is not a member of the Bai family? Bai Juan. Gu Ro's long dress swayed, and her face was very aggrieved. At this point, do you still want to ignore Aju's thoughts? She had always treated herself as an outsider, so she spent her money carefully. After all, she came from the mountains. Entering a family like the Bai family, from a certain perspective, was a burden for her. She should be more suited to a simpler and freer life. Perhaps that environment is a little bitter and poor, but that's what suits her. When Helian Qingshan heard this, she smiled coldly. You just want to say that Jio doesn't come from a good family and can't afford expensive things? I don't mean to emphasize this point. Gu Ro lowered her head. I don't want to expose Aju's matter in public, but if I don't say it, Aju won't say it, and the misunderstanding will always exist. Gu Ro, who said these words, was like a helpless narrator. Those who heard her words would more or less decide that Aju's gift was worthless. It had nothing to do with her at all. It was all because of Aju's background, however. It seems that there is indeed a misunderstanding. This sentence was not said by Helian Qingshan. When her voice sounded, it was accompanied by the buzzing of a motorcycle. Therefore, at that moment, people subconsciously turned their heads to look for the source of the sound. At the entrance, the mottled light faded away. A delicate and handsome figure walked in, gradually revealing her incomparably clear face. Her long chestnut-colored curly hair reached her waist, and she was holding a pure black helmet in her left hand. Behind her was a motorcycle in full swing. There was another person standing beside the motorcycle. He was different from Helian Vivian's valiant figure. His existence was proof of what it meant to be a vampire aristocrat. His handsomeness was self-evident. As for that man, he could almost produce light by himself. He had a head of silver-gray hair, a face that did not show his age at all, and a smooth curve outlined by his chin. He was so noble that it was almost bewitching. Even his fingers were so clean that they did not look good. They were wrapped in pure black gloves along the lines. It really made people think of the jade-like face that people in ancient times described when they described the children of aristocratic families. Such a man, who else could it be but Baligaju? The two people who were known as the most compatible walked to the center of the hall and stood on both sides of Aju. The scene immediately caused an uproar. Almost everyone looked at them, as if they were looking at a god in their hearts. If it were not for the fact that Baligaju had been living in seclusion all these years, who would take the Gu family in the business circle seriously? Juwei Group would always be a miracle in the business world. Even if its protagonist did not appear, it still stood there, symbolizing the top of the pyramid. In fact, the Bailey family's influence had always been strong. It was just that they had hidden it deeply. Oh my god, that's the founder of Juwei Group, right? I didn't expect even him to come. The Bai family is really amazing. I heard that this CEO Ju has always attended such banquets. And his wife, they are also unfathomable. What kind of wind blew today that they are all here? Just as the people in the hall were discussing excitedly, when Bai Juan saw Baligaju's face, his pitch-black eyes immediately narrowed. It was him, the mysterious man he had seen at the place of the eminent monk. As if sensing the gaze from the youth, Baligaju lifted his eyes, and his gaze was very indifferent. Bai Juan clenched his fingers. It was indeed him. Moreover, he still remembered him. Baijuan never thought that the mysterious person he met on the mountain would be the man who was known as a business legend. As for Aju at this moment, her small tiger face was completely stunned. She just stared blankly at the white cat on her head and watched this scene with her almond-like round eyes. She never dreamed that she would see her father and mother. Her two brothers appeared in front of her at the same time. She was already very happy, because that was something that would only happen in her dreams. But now, Aju raised her small face and looked at Beligaju and Hellion Vivian in front of her without moving. She always felt that all her dreams had come true. She was too excited. What should she do? Thinking of this, Aju tilted her small head. She really wanted to beat someone up to vent, or lie in bed and roll around twice. It seemed that no matter how old she was, when Aju was excited, her expression was very direct and domineering. She would either beat people up or like to spin in circles. It was the same now. It was just that the situation did not allow it. Otherwise, she would have already played a set of Shaolin fist techniques on Guro, or circled around Hellion Vivian. Chapter 1234. However, at this moment, Guro did not know what the relationship between Hellion Vivian and Aju was. Just by listening to Hellion Weiwei's words, Guro thought that this woman with a high status was speaking up for her. She immediately looked at Hellion Weiwei with a smile on her face. Fortunately, I have you who believes in me. Old Master Gu also thought that Hellion Vivian's words were to help his granddaughter out. He immediately walked up with the dragon-headed walking stick in his hand and said to Beligaju, "CEO Ju, what a coincidence. We meet again." Bailey Jiaju did not say anything. He was just like a well-mannered aristocrat, standing there with an indifferent expression. Old Master Gu continued, "CEO Ju and Madam are the most sensible. The children know best about the matters between them. Since everyone is here, let's not let misunderstandings create estrangement. I brought a bottle of red wine that has been in my collection for 100 years. Let's have a few drinks with Old Bai today for the banquet. Thank you, madam, for speaking up for my granddaughter." Speaking up for your granddaughter? When Beligaju heard this, he couldn't help but tilt his head and smile. His silver hair fell to the side with his movements, leaving only a faint smile on his lips. "I don't think my madam meant that at all." Hellion Vivian also smiled. Her clear eyes glanced in Guro's direction before she said to Old Master Jiang, "Old man, the misunderstanding I'm talking about is not the misunderstanding your granddaughter is talking about. You're really thinking too much." Hearing this, Guro's face instantly froze. The pitiful smile that was originally on her face stopped awkwardly on her face. She didn't expect this situation to be caused by her overthinking. No matter what, she was still the daughter of the Gu family. Knowing that her two sons had misunderstood her, shouldn't Hellion Vivian speak up for her? Why did it feel like the other party was saying that she was trying to climb up the social ladder? Guro bit her lip tightly. She really didn't know how to smooth things over for herself. She couldn't help but look at her grandfather. Old Master Gu also felt like he had been hit in the head. He didn't expect that at his age, he would still lose face like this. "No matter what, thank you, madam, for unintentionally helping our innocent child out of this predicament." He thought that if he said this, she would laugh it off. After all, they were all in the business world. Even if the Gu family was indeed not comparable to the Juwei group. At this point, this matter should be considered to be over. However, what he didn't expect was that Hellion Vivian didn't have any intention of giving him a way out. Instead, after hearing his words, the corners of her mouth curled up. It was very, very cold. "Old Master Gu, after I give you the gift in my hand, let's talk about this misunderstanding again. Let's see whose child is innocent, because we really should have a good talk about family education." At this point, she paused and looked at the tall and straight youth. She smiled faintly and handed something over. "I heard that it's popular to give contracts as birthday gifts nowadays. Since Baijuan likes it, I also have a contract here. It's signed with the Juwei Group. 10% of the profits will be purchased. Baijuan, this is for you. Happy birthday." It was also a contract, but the Juwei Group's contract meant something. No one present didn't know what that meant. This was simply several streets ahead of the Gu family's contract. However, Baijuan didn't take it. Even his expression didn't change, because his gaze was always on a Jew. Hellion Vivian smiled when she saw this. She turned her head to look at old Master Bai and said, "Old Chief, your grandson really doesn't disappoint." However, this first birthday gift must be given out, because this gift is to thank Baijuan for giving the purple jade Buddha head that he worked so hard to get to a Jew. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to come at this time. Purple jade Buddha head? Old Master Bai still didn't know about this matter, but he was very sharp and sensed that something was wrong with those words. Why do you have to thank Baijuan for giving a Jew something? Old Master Bai turned his face and pretended to be serious as he asked Hellion Vivian, "Girl, what exactly is going on?" Speaking of which, Old Master Bai and Hellion Vivian used to know each other. However, it was not a direct superior-subordinate relationship. It was when Old Master Bai was at the border. Young Master Tang had sent the ghost organization over to provide support. From then on, Old Master Bai had the idea of taking Hellion Vivian as his adopted daughter. Unfortunately, the girl ran away quickly. When they contacted each other again, she said that the people at home were all evil, and it was not convenient for her to come to the Bai family. This time she came, but she always said something inexplicable. "Nothing." Hellion Vivian smiled lightly. "Because a Jew is the person I mentioned to you before." You mean? Even Old Master Bai, who had experienced great storms, began to lose his composure. His eyes flickered as he looked at a Jew, who was standing under the light with a cute face. This child, she was actually, Hellion Vivian curled her lips. Her voice was not loud, but her words were clear. "That's right, she is my daughter." This sentence was like a thunderclap that sounded on the flat ground, heavily smashing into the banquet. Pung! The contract document that Gu Rou was still holding in her hand fell. Her face seemed to have been slapped hard by someone, and she could not help but turn pale. Everyone present couldn't help but make different sounds after hearing this news. Xiaolin and Li Hailu were standing not far away. They looked at a Jew in a daze, their faces full of disbelief. Hellion Vivian's daughter? Then isn't she the legendary little princess of the Ju Wei group? The one who has never been seen before? How could it be her? Gu Rou did not believe her ears at all. How could that child who only knew how to eat and drink become the little princess of the Ju Wei group? She was clearly an orphan who came down from the mountain. She should have saved a lot of money. She had already heard about a Jew's situation from her grandfather. It was Grandpa Bai who told her grandfather personally. They had brought a Jew back from a temple in a remote mountain area. The incense in that temple was not strong. If it were not for the fact that the abbot was an expert, Baijuan would have been sent there to counsel him. No one would know about that kind of remote place. Moreover, Grandpa Bai also said that a Jew had already stayed in the temple when she was a baby. When a Jew was young, she always said that she would go and find her family when she grew up. But no one would take a child's word seriously. Which truly wealthy family would send a child to a temple at such a young age? Therefore, Gu Rou made up her mind. Even if a Jew had a family, it would only be those poor farmers who casually threw their children away, because they could not live a good life. Chapter 1235. Gu Rou had always relied on her own guesses to think that a Jew was from a poor family. However, a Jew was lucky enough to meet a kind senior monk who picked her up and brought her back to the temple. She used this opportunity to get close to the Bai family. If that senior monk was not Baijuan's master, I'm afraid no one knows who a Jew is yet. At most she was just a village girl. How could she become Baijuan's sister? It was because of this relationship that Gu Rou wanted to isolate her without any fear. How could an orphan girl become the Bai family's treasure just by relying on luck? She even became the only person Baijuan allowed to get close to. But now, someone actually told her that that child was not a village girl, but the little princess of the Ju Wei group. Gu Rou only felt a burning pain on her face. Disbelief could not replace her current emotions at all, because the smile on Hellion Vivian's face was obviously telling her what it meant to humiliate herself. When she saw this scene, her heart skipped a beat. There was only one thought in her mind. She was finished. The two girls who had been following behind her complacently couldn't help but turn pale. They knew that Aju was not the biological granddaughter of the Bai family. Instead, they heard the news of her being adopted from some mountainous area from Guro. Therefore, they did not take that child seriously. Now, as long as they thought of what they had said, the two girls' hearts trembled. The little princess of the Juwei group. They could not wait to curry favor with her. They could not afford to offend her at all. Such news was indeed like a bombshell. Not only did it give a heavy blow to those who had mocked Aju, but even Bai Juan's usually indifferent gaze shook violently. His clean and handsome face was filled with shock. He looked at the child he had raised for nearly 8 years. He had never thought that she would have any family other than him. Ever since they were on the mountain, that child had used her soft little hand to hold his fingertips. She was wearing a kasaya and had a bald head. She had called him Big Brother seriously, and said that she would treat him well in the future. Bai Juan told himself that he had to raise this child as his own. He had to give her everything he could. As long as she wanted it, as long as he had it. It did not matter that Aju did not have parents. Anyway, Aju had him. He would make her the happiest person in the world. He remembered that when she was young, the little girl would always tumble in his arms. She even said that her mother had sent her away for a reason, but she didn't say the exact reason. At that time, Bai Juan only felt his heart ache because he could clearly see the longing hidden in the child's eyes. He thought that she was like him, who had lost her parents a long time ago. That was why he used such words to comfort himself. But now, Bai Juan looked at the still cute little tiger face. For a moment, it was as if a bottle of colorful paint had been flipped over in his heart. He didn't know how to describe that feeling. His girl finally had a family. No wonder Aju likes Bailey Shangxia so much since she was young. She was very passionate about his movies and whatnot. Li Heila's IQ seemed to have been lit up all of a sudden. He slapped his forehead and said, "Oh my God, so that's how it is. Because of that guy." She looked at me fiercely many times. Shaolin also remembered the first time he took Aju shopping. When Aju saw Bailey Shangxia on the big screen of the advertisement in the shopping mall. At that time, he felt that Aju did not seem like a child who would chase after celebrities. However, when it came to the problem of Bailey Shangxia, she was especially irrational. She was like a little girl chasing after her idol. Bailey Shangxia did not appear on television very often. Every time Bailey Shangxia came out, her round almond eyes would light up. At that time, Bai Juan had even eaten a big bowl of vinegar because of this matter. He had even made a fuss about going out to live outside once. Now that he thought about it, as a sister, she must have been extremely supportive and fond of her brother. Also, when they met Helian Qingchen in the school cafeteria and provoked her, no wonder Aju had such a reaction. She looked at them with vigilance and did not give in at all. At that time, they still did not understand why Aju would fight with them to such an extent for an outsider. Now the truth was out. When they were fighting with Helian Qingchen, there were two girls beside them who kept mocking Helian Qingchen. According to Aju's temper, she did not directly rush over at that time and send them flying with a kick. This was already the greatest extent of her tolerance. At that time, Aju probably cared about their face, so she did not beat up Guro and the others. But even so, he and Hai Lu were very clear about how Bai Juan had survived that day. In front of him, Aju chose to protect others. Bai Juan did not attend that afternoon's class, nor did he have the mood to care about other things. Otherwise, Guro would not have jumped around for so long. When Shaolin thought of this, he turned his eyes and could not help but look in Bai Juan's direction. Now, Bai Juan was most concerned about the identity of that person. Since Helian Qingchen was Aju's brother, the two of them should be fine. However, Shaolin knew that Bai Juan had really done everything that he had disdained to do in the past for Aju. For example, going to the sea to do business. He was the one who opened up the connections, and Bai Juan was in charge of all the operations and commands. They earned a lot, and were very good at making investments. After all, the resources were there. Bai Juan had always been like this. Compared to his peers, he was always so practical. All of this was because he wanted to become stronger. That youth had once told him personally that even without the Bai family, he would still give Aju the best life. But now, not only did a Jew have a family, but her background was also so unbelievable. With Baijuan's personality, other than being happy, there should be something deeper. Hellion Vivian did not look at the reactions of the others. Her eyes had always been looking at the Gu family. Then, she reached out and touched Aju's head. Her voice was flat, but it made old Master Gu's expression change immediately. The misunderstanding I was talking about is this misunderstanding. Hellion Vivian chuckled. My daughter is not as poor as Miss Gu thinks. Originally, I didn't want to make such a big fuss. It's just that a 17-year-old girl doesn't enjoy her youth and has to hide so many schemes to deal with someone younger than her. Old Master Gu, does your Gu family really think that there is no one behind my daughter? When old Master Gu heard this, he looked at the gazes cast at them from all directions and hurriedly explained. This is all a misunderstanding. Xiao definitely has no intention of dealing with a Jew. Chapter 1236. Old Master Gu. Hellion Vivian curled her lips. Do you really think I can't hear anything? Just now, every word your granddaughter said was deliberately misleading others, making everyone think that the problem in this matter was all because of a Jew. I have to say that this move is indeed beautiful. I didn't, Mrs. Hellion, I really didn't. Gu Ro's beautiful eyes were red, as if she was trying her best to suppress her grievance. She said to Hellion Vivian in a low voice, I couldn't think of so many things, so how could I mislead others? If Madam really thinks that I made a Jew suffer, I can apologize. I can do anything you want. After all, I really didn't know that a Jew was your daughter. Those who didn't know the reason saw this scene and thought that Hellion Vivian was using her power to make things difficult for a junior. The one who was making things difficult was a 17-year-old girl. Hellion Vivian looked at Gu Ro's haggard little face and suddenly smiled. If that's the case, then apologize first. Hearing Hellion Vivian's words, Gu Ro's body trembled, and a trace of uneasiness flashed across her beautiful face. In fact, how could she be willing to apologize? So many people were watching. For her to personally apologize to another person, this was simply a kind of torture for her. However, she had already come to this point. If she didn't say anything, she would only be more embarrassed. Thinking of this, Gu Ro gently bit her red lips and looked at little Aju with red eyes. Aju, Sister Ro doesn't know why things have gotten to this point. It was clearly just a birthday gift, but it caused everyone to misunderstand. If Sister Ro's unintentional actions made you feel uncomfortable, Sister Ro apologizes to you. After Gu Ro finished speaking, she turned her head and cried. She looked as if she had been beaten into confessing. Old Master Gu also felt uncomfortable. He turned his head and said to Hellion Vivian angrily, Madam should be satisfied now, right? Not satisfied. These three words were not said by Hellion Vivian. It was Beligaju, who was standing at the side and had not spoken. Aju looked back with her round almond-shaped eyes. Bailey Jiaju glanced sideways and glanced at her. Then, he reached out and placed his hand on her little head, rubbing it back and forth. The black gloves perfectly wrapped around his slender hands, making him look like a character who had walked out of a comic book. His handsome and dignified face was still as calm as ever. But he did not know why. The moment he opened his mouth, that evil and cold aura suddenly became very strong. Aju raised her hand and touched the top of her head that her father had touched. Her small face was even more stunned. Did Imperial Father stroke her head? His head was touched by his father. This was the only thought left in Aju's mind. He didn't even care about the people around him. Bailey Shangxia and Hellion Qingchen watched from the side and couldn't help but raise their eyebrows. Back in the day, Imperial Father had never touched their heads or killed them. It was already good enough that he didn't throw them here and there. When it came to Qingchen, the man still had some patience. When it came to Bailey Shangxia, he really displayed the characteristics of a demon to the fullest. Bailey Shangxia basically didn't want to recall the past. Thousands of years ago, in order to find his mother, his father was so angry that he almost destroyed his son. Now the Gu family was actually throwing a tantrum at his mother. They were really too blind. Old Master Gu still didn't realize what he was going to face next. He only felt that the Bailey family was deliberately looking for trouble. His old face became more and more unsightly, and the anger in his voice also became stronger. CEO Ju, are you insisting on making things difficult for my Gu family? Baligaju looked at him, and the corners of his mouth slowly curled up into a cold smile. The apology is not sincere. How is it making things difficult for your Gu family? I've already said that. Is it not sincere? Gu Ro's face turned pale. She looked at the crowd, and tears welled up in her beautiful eyes. She looked very pitiful. She lowered her head and muttered, "It's just a misunderstanding. How else do you want me to apologize? Even the Juwei group can't bully people like this." Baligaju didn't say anything. He just curled his lips. That smile was extremely cold. It was so cold that Gu Chung, who had been watching from the side, subconsciously shivered. He kept feeling that something was wrong, but he couldn't tell what was wrong. At this time, Bailey Shangxia laughed viciously. "Bully people." As he spoke, he took a step in the direction of Gu Ro. He sneered and said word by word, "If you say so, then I'll also tell you that we are bullying you." "You." Gu Ro took a deep breath. Then her eyes turned red. Even her shoulders trembled. She looked extremely weak and pitiful. Old Master Gu patted his granddaughter's back. Then his face became much more serious. "Our Gu family has always been gentle. We never want to be enemies with anyone. The Juwei group is a big business. Our Gu family really can't afford to offend them. But CEO Ju, if you keep making things difficult for people like this, our Gu family won't take a step back." As soon as Old Master Gu finished speaking, there was an uproar in the hall. After all, those who came to the Bai family's birthday party were all famous people. These people were different from ordinary businessmen. Most of them had a red background. Some old commanders were born with such justice. Hearing this, the gazes that were cast at the Bailey family gradually became disapproving. "Isn't this too overbearing? Can't even apologize? Besides, that girl Gu didn't do anything wrong." Sounds of discussion could be heard one after another. Gu Ro lowered her eyes pitifully. Old Master Gu's face was full of righteousness, as if their Gu family was the most powerful family in the world. At this moment, Helian Weiwei opened her mouth with an indifferent expression. "It seems that if we don't show some concrete evidence, some people won't admit that they're wrong. Sure enough, when discussing matters with the Gu family, we should first discuss the family's upbringing, then discuss who's the one who bullied others." As she spoke, Helian Vivian raised her finger. With a snap of her fingers, there was a loud bang. The huge television screen in the hall suddenly lit up. L, who was holding a long gun in one hand, and Monkey, who was holding a notebook in his left hand, stood at the connection point of the line source and made an okay gesture to Helian Vivian. "Boss, we can begin." "Begin what?" Just when everyone was puzzled, a voice suddenly rang out. After a buffer, Gu Ro's figure actually appeared on the screen. In an instant, everyone present looked in the direction of the screen. Chapter 1237. The location on the screen was very familiar to everyone. It was a particularly remote corner of the Bai family's courtyard today. However, the scene on the screen was not from night time, but from the afternoon, before the banquet started. There were two men beside Gu Ro. They were both wearing the uniform of receptionists, but they did not look like members of the Bai family. Instead, they looked like members of the Gu family. Although the video was not very clear, and there was a rustling sound in the voice, one could still vaguely hear Gu Ro saying something to the two men. When this scene appeared, the tears in Gu Ro's eyes froze. She even forgot that she was still pretending to be pitiful. She was so anxious that she wanted to rush towards the power cord. Helian Vivian turned to the side to block her. Her eyes were slightly cold. "It hasn't started yet. Why are you in such a hurry, Miss Gu?" "Grandpa." Gu Ro knew that she couldn't go over, so she could only turn around and grab Old Master Gu's sleeve tightly, wanting him to help. Old Master Gu looked at Baligaju and knocked his dragon-headed walking stick heavily. His eyes were full of anger. "What are you trying to do? Why is my granddaughter up there? Haven't the Gu family always been kind and honest?" The smile at the corner of Baligaja's mouth was cold, and the hostility between his eyes was even more obvious. As his words fell, there seemed to be an invisible fog behind him that was surging back and forth, making it impossible for people to get close to him. The thugs of the Gu family who followed Old Master Gu still wanted to move, but just as they took a step forward, they were blocked by a black shadow that suddenly appeared in front of them. Old Master Gu could only widen his eyes angrily and say anxiously, "Beligaju, shall lower your voice." Bailey Jiaju put his slender fingers between his lips. His movements were elegant and devilish. Even the corners of his mouth looked like he was smiling, yet not smiling. "My subordinates have bad tempers. Old Master Gu is always moving around like this. I'm not sure if they will hurt you." That's right, it was not them but them. Every man in black was transformed from the monsters that followed behind Bailey Jiaju. The Gu family's hired thugs did not know if they were hallucinating, but they felt that when those people blocked them, their eyes seemed to be suffused with a blood-red color that made them tremble all over. Bailey Shangxia looked at this scene and laughed evilly. Helian Qingchen's expression was indifferent. She only stroked Aju's head with her fingers and stood with her sister like that. Her eyes were cold as she looked at the Gu family. Without these distractions, Helian Vivian glanced at Monkey and the rest, indicating for them to continue. The screen pressed the play button again, and Gu Ro's voice slowly entered everyone's ears. "When you see her, think of a way to drive her away. Understand?" At this point, Gu Ro paused and took out a stack of money from her wallet. She placed it in the hands of the two men. "You have to be straightforward when you do this. Don't let anyone know." The two men didn't accept it at first. They seemed to be a little worried. "Miss, this is the Bai family's banquet, not the Gu family's. If we don't let her go home, will there be trouble?" "What trouble can there be?" Gu Ro slapped the money into their hands and smiled gently, as if she was very confident. "Don't worry. You have to have a birthday invitation to enter and leave this house. She doesn't have an invitation with her, and she doesn't want to come back with us. It's normal that she can't enter the Bai family. When the time comes, no one will suspect you. They will only think that she didn't arrive." After the two men heard this, they asked, "Won't young Master Bai be anxious if Miss Bai doesn't appear?" "An old Master Bai. Today is Bai Juan's birthday. No one will care where an adopted daughter goes. Moreover, she was originally a guest in someone else's house. You don't have to worry about this. I'll do a good job." Gu Ro obviously didn't think this was a problem. One of the men said again, "There are so many guests coming and going. What if she clamors to come in? You guys deal with this as you see fit. If she's too troublesome, find a place to lock her up first." Gu Ro's voice sank. "As long as she doesn't enter the Bai family today, you will be rewarded." When the two men heard this, they made up their minds and nodded. Yes. As soon as the three of them finished speaking, two girls entered the camera. One of them smiled and held Gu Ro's arm. They looked very intimate, as if they didn't think that they had done something wrong. Instead, they were a little proud. "Gu Ro, your idea is still the best. To be honest, young Master Bai's sister is really too much of a hindrance. The last time we had a meal, it was the same. We were all 17 or 18 years old. We had to have some space for free love. As a junior high school student, she always followed behind young Master Bai. She didn't have any judgment at all, causing us to not even feel comfortable eating. She was either worried about this or that. Also, the last time we were in number 1 high school's cafeteria, the 3 men and 3 women could have directly made friends with each other. It was obvious that there was one more person. She didn't know her own limits at all. She even needed us to remind her to avoid it. As expected, she came from a small place. She didn't know the rules. Even after entering the Bai family, she couldn't change that uncomfortable poor aura. She didn't like to eat meat, and always liked to eat vegetables. How could others accommodate her every time? Great. Now that she wasn't at the birthday party, we could play to our heart's content. That's right, that's right. The other girl's face revealed a look of anticipation. Even her eyes were sparkling. I heard that old Master Gu's banquet plan for the Bai family included a condition for us to play alone. We could roast meat and have fun all night. Unfortunately, the Bai family canceled this project because they had to take care of that child. Now that the child can't even enter the house, they don't have to think about her anymore. A private celebration. Just thinking about it makes me excited. Guro, you can still be with Senior Colonel Bai. The two of you hee. What are you thinking about? Guro's face revealed a trace of shyness and pink. Then she chuckled and said coldly, you saw it too. I wanted to get along well with her time and time again. But this child is so insensible. She always likes to embarrass me in front of others. Since I asked her when I met her, and she didn't want to come back, then I'll let her stay outside obediently. That way, she won't forget her background. Guro is right. The Bai family is too good to this child. Especially Senior Colonel Bai. Why is he so good to a foster sister? Chapter 1238. Guro listened to the words beside her ear and sneered. Then she continued, Bai Juan is good. After today, he will stop treating her. She didn't even attend her brother's birthday party on time. And she even made so many people waste time waiting for her. How long do you think the Bai family will tolerate such an insensible child? So you're thinking? The girls understood and laughed. This is good too. In the future, Bai Juan won't take her seriously. When we go out again, no one will bother us. Then, the screen shook and the camera panned to a school cafeteria. In the bustling crowd, a Jew was sitting upright beside a long table. She was holding a lunchbox in her hand, and a little white cat on her head. The cat's tail was wagging here and there. On the screen, a Jew opened the lunchbox and looked like she was preparing to eat. At this moment, two of the three girls looked at each other from her side. Then, they opened their mouths. Due to the noise and the fact that no one was taking the video on purpose, there was a lot of noise. Therefore, the quality of the picture was not very good. But even so, from the concentrated voices, one could still hear what they were saying to a Jew. The meaning was nothing more than saying that this cat took up too much time and asked a Jew to go to another table. Although Guro and the others were not very straightforward, the contempt and exclusion in their eyes were very obvious. A Jew glanced at them and clenched her small fists. She looked like she wanted to beat them up. However, the child did not say anything in the end. She just buried her small head and hugged the lunchbox in her hand. She sat at the dining table next to them and began to feed the little white cat. For some reason, her small back view looked lonely and lonely. The three girls then started to chat and laugh. One of them even glanced at a Jew. Then, she lowered her voice and whispered in Guro's ear. Bai Juan's sister is really an eyesore. Fortunately, at this moment, Helian Qingshan, who was wearing a school uniform, appeared in the scene. He walked to a Jew's side. Then Li Hailu and the others rushed towards him. Then, the girls mocked him, saying that a person like him was not worthy of eating on the second floor of the cafeteria. They told him to go back to where he came from and so on. Those words that entered his ears were too unpleasant. Some people in the hall could not help but raise their hands to cover their mouths. Their eyes were filled with shock. The commanders stared at the scene in front of them for a long time. All of them widened their eyes in shock. They had never thought that a 17-year-old girl would be so scheming. They had never thought that these well-mannered girls in front of them would be like this behind their backs. Not only did they mock and ridicule them, they even looked down on them. How did the Gu family raise such a granddaughter? In an instant, everyone in the hall turned to look at the Gu family. It's too ruthless. I really didn't expect this to be a girl's idea. If it wasn't for his brother's protection, a Jew would have been bullied. I've already been pushed aside, okay? Wasn't it shown in the video? Those girls' faces were too ugly. Oh my god, I was speechless. Hearing the discussions around her, Guro was stunned. After a while, she said in a panic, "This isn't true. This can't be real." Guro's face was pale. She wanted to defend herself, but the video was clearly displayed there. No matter how hard she tried to deny it, she could not come up with a reasonable excuse. Even her words became pale and powerless. Guro bit her lip tightly. Why was there this video? These things shouldn't exist in this world. The video is fake. These videos must be fake. Guro denied it crazily. She only wanted to turn off the screen as soon as possible. However, everyone knew what the truth was. After watching the video, the shocked old master turned to look at Gu Rou. His eyes were filled with disbelief. His gaze towards Gu Rou was filled with shock, disappointment, and even anger. Helian Weiwei stood at the side. The corners of her mouth curled up, bringing out a faint sneer. Miss Gu, before you say that the video is fake, can you please take a look at the date and source of the video? These videos were all taken from the school and the Bai family's surveillance cameras. How could they be fake? Aye. Gu Rou's pale face froze. Helian Vivian's every word was like the sharpest needle, piercing through all her disguises. Helian Vivian looked at her indifferently. Her eyes slid past her face and landed on Old Master Gu. Old Master Gu, haven't you always said that our family is bullying others? After watching this video, I wonder if Old Master Gu will still say that our family is bullying your good granddaughter? When Old Master Gu heard this, he was extremely embarrassed. The existence of the video was like a pair of invisible hands, slapping his face until it hurt. What his precious granddaughter had done was clearly recorded on it. He didn't even dare to believe that the person who said those sarcastic words was his granddaughter, who had always been obedient and sensible. He had just said that the Gu family had always been kind to people, but in the surveillance camera, it was simply too clear how his granddaughter had bullied a little girl. Helian Vivian didn't stop. She glanced at the people present, and her tone turned cold. No matter how my daughter was born, it's not her fault that she came to the Bai family and followed Bai Juan. Gu Rou felt that she was an eyesore and hindered your precious granddaughter from pursuing Bai Juan, so she came up with so many sinister tricks. It's fine if it's just to ostracize her, but she actually wanted someone to capture my daughter and lock her in a room. In order to get close to Bai Juan, in order to make Bai Juan hate a Jew, and in order to be in the limelight at Bai Juan's birthday party. She used such a method to deal with a Jew. She clearly knew how much a Jew valued Bai Juan's birthday, yet she still did it so deliberately. Old Master Gu, this is really a good granddaughter that your Gu family has raised. Helian Vivian's last sentence was like a huge blow, causing Old Master Gu to feel as if he had been ruthlessly beaten. At this point, everyone in the hall clearly understood what was going on. They looked at the Gu family. That kind of crusading gaze made Old Master Gu wish he could find a hole to hide in. Chapter 1239. It's not like that. Listen to my explanation. It's not like that. Gu Rou's entire body trembled slightly as she looked at the crowd in fear. She anxiously explained, and bean-sized tears fell from her face uncontrollably. She couldn't admit it. Once she admitted what she had done, her reputation would be completely ruined. I really didn't think too much at that time. Gu Rou tugged at Old Master Gu's sleeve anxiously. Grandfather, you have to believe me. I really didn't think too much. Old Master Gu raised his head and looked at the crowd. Under so many gazes, he didn't know how to open his mouth. Helian Vivian chuckled. Her eyes were a little cold. Old Master Gu, it's a pity that your granddaughter didn't learn how to act. She said that she didn't think too much. She even thought of ordering someone to kidnap a girl who wasn't even 12 years old. What else did she not dare to do? If it weren't for these videos, she wouldn't have admitted to doing all this. She even tried to mislead people and make the guests feel that our family was bullying her. This kind of scheming is not like what she said. She didn't think too much. Hearing this, Gu Rou's face turned pale. No, it's not like that. I really just wanted a Jew to have some self-awareness. I never thought of bullying her at all. I wanted her to know that a child like her isn't worthy of Bai Juan at all. However, she's too clingy and doesn't know anything. She always follows behind Bai Juan. I really never thought of really harming her. Gu Rou. Helian Vivian's voice sank. I've never liked to bully the weak, but you've gone too far in pretending. It's really difficult for people to show mercy. At this point, you're still saying that you never thought of harming others. You got someone to lock a Jew up for a night. Isn't this method ruthless enough? It was more than just ruthless. It was simply inhumane. People were discussing animatedly. One had to know that any kind-hearted person would not use such a method to deal with a child. This could not be said to be an unintentional mistake. It was obvious that she wanted to directly destroy a Jew. Xiao Lin and Li Hailu looked at each other. Their current feelings were more complicated than anyone else's, especially Li Hailu. He wished he could slap himself twice and then teach Gu Rou a lesson. If it wasn't for him, even if Bai Juan wanted to make a deal with the Gu family, Gu Rou wouldn't have been able to do these things so easily. It was all because he was blind and couldn't see through her. He had been angry that a Jew was siding with others and not them, but he never realized what had happened that day. And what the two girls said, he really couldn't believe that they were like this. Bai Juan was worried that one of them was his girlfriend, so when he got angry that day, he left some leeway. It's my fault. Li Hailu blamed himself so much that his eyes were red. He clenched his fists tightly. If it wasn't for me, Gu Rou wouldn't have had the chance to come into contact with a Jew. Xiao Lin narrowed his eyes and said, Hailu, now is not the time to talk about this. Since you and I are the ones who caused this, then we have to do our part to get rid of these people. We'll deal with whoever bullies a Jew directly. After Xiao Lin's reminder, Li Hailu looked fiercely in the direction of Gu Rou and the two girls. His voice was cold. I won't let you have an easy time. The two girls' fingers trembled. The way they wanted to escape was blocked by the invisible man in black. They had never thought that such a video would exist. Why were all their words being recorded on the camera? What should they do? What should they do now? They were definitely dead. Offending Xiao Lin and Li Hailu meant that they would no longer be able to establish themselves in the circle. They could almost imagine how miserable their lives would be in the future. Even if they were from second high school, putting aside the power of the Li and Xiao families, just the influence of these two people in the hearts of the girls would make them suffer. Moreover, when they did these things and said these words, they never thought that the child would be the little princess of the Ju Wei group. How were they going to live in the future? When the two girls thought of this, they did not care anymore. They tried their best to explain and expose Gu Rou. It's not our fault. It's Gu Rou. She was the daughter of the Gu family, so we could only go along with what she said. If we didn't do what she asked us to do, someone would ostracize us the next day at school. Previously, there was a girl who went against her wishes. Now no one in the school is sitting with her for dinner. Everyone in the class treats her like a monster. Hailu, you have to believe us. We only care so much about Gu Rou's opinion, because we don't want to become like that. We will do whatever she says. Moreover, she once vaguely mentioned that it would be great if Bai Juan didn't have this troublesome sister by his side. She would be able to be with Bai Juan all the time, and it would be easier for her to pursue Bai Juan. What nonsense are you talking about? After hearing these words, Gu Rou couldn't help but shout. She rushed in front of the two girls and slapped the face of the girl who spoke. Her eyes were red. I've been so good to you, and you dare to treat me like this. The girl burst into tears immediately. She reached out to cover her face and shouted, Anyway, I've already offended everyone. I don't care if I offend you or not. If you weren't the daughter of the Gu family, how many people do you think will accompany you? You. Gu Rou reached out and pounced on the girl again. No one cared about them. The two of them instantly pulled each other into a ball. Their hair was tugging at each other's hair. There was no sign of their usual gentleness. Instead, it was like a dog-eat-dog situation. Even old Master Gu's eyes were filled with shock when he saw this scene, let alone the others. The people at the scene no longer spoke up for Gu Rou. Instead, the disgust in their eyes was so obvious. Gu Qing stood at the side and clenched his hands tightly. After the video was released, he knew that the Gu family was finished this time. When he found out, he thought that even if his cousin liked Bai Juan and did some tricks, she wouldn't have such a bottom line. However, after seeing those scenes, even he felt an indescribable anger in his chest. He knew very well what kind of person the little bean was. His cousin actually used such a method to deal with her. Moreover, she was just a child. Chapter 1240. The tearing sounds in the hall grew louder and louder. Seeing this scene, Aju's big round eyes turned around. Her small face was very serious as she said to Helian Qingchen, who was standing beside her, Second brother. Watching them hurt each other like this is even better than me beating them up myself. Helian Qingchen tilted her head and smiled. She lowered her voice and said, This is all father's idea. I have to learn from him in the future. Aju nodded her head as she spoke. The kitten on her head shook its tail with her movements. Of course, old Master Gu would not allow his granddaughter to continue to embarrass herself like this. With a stiff expression, he instructed the people beside him. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and pull Miss away. The Gu family's thugs did want to pull her away, but they were still being stared at by the men in black. Just the look in their eyes was terrifying. It was as if the ones looking at them were not humans, but some other unknown creature. The Gu family's thugs were so scared that they did not dare to move. Seeing this, old Master Gu became even more anxious. He walked over with his walking stick and wanted to pull his granddaughter away personally. However, when Gu Rou raised her hand, she touched his eyes. There was a loud bang. Old Master Gu's walking stick loosened. If Gu Qing had not reacted quickly and dragged him from behind, old Master Gu's old life would have been over here. Nonsense. This is simply nonsense. Old Master Gu felt a burning pain in his eyes. He knew that everyone here was looking at them, looking at the Gu family, as if they were watching a farce. It might not be so embarrassing if it was just scheming against others, but what was this now? The granddaughter that he had carefully raised and praised every time she met actually flew into a rage in public like a shrew. And the things that were mentioned in the video, every single one of them made old Master Gu want to leave immediately. Seeing old Master Gu like this, Gu Qing reached out and grabbed Gu Rou's wrist. Gu Rou was still struggling, shouting, Gu Qing, let go of me. I'm going to teach this traitor a lesson. As she spoke, she kept kicking her feet, as if she wanted to kill the other party. Gu Qing was furious and pulled her over. The young man's voice was very deep at this moment. Enough. Wake up and see what kind of situation this is. After hearing Gu Cheng's words, Gu Rou finally realized that she was still at Bai Xuan's birthday party. She panicked and looked to her side. She saw that everyone present was looking at her as if she was trash. The disgust in their eyes was so obvious. Only then did she realize what she had done in front of everyone. I didn't do it on purpose. Gu Rou's voice became weak again. Her beautiful black hair had also become messy. Her exquisite makeup had also changed because of the scuffle just now. The lip gloss that she had applied was also all smudged. Originally, girls relied on 70% of their appearance. Now Gu Rou's temperament was completely gone. How could she still look like a rich daughter? Therefore, no matter how pitiful she pretended to be, it looked like she was putting on an act. Gu Rou herself did not realize it. She pointed her finger at the girl who had been torn apart by her. It's all her fault. She's slandering me. Slandering. The girl sneered. Half of her eyelashes had fallen off. She did not look much better. She was sharp-tongued. What you said before is all in our WeChat group. There are all the chat records there. Are you only willing to admit it after I send the chat records to everyone? Miss Gu. Gu Rou's face turned green, as if she was angered by her words again. Her fingers trembled, as if she was about to pounce on her again. Gu Qing waved his long arm and stopped her. Gu Rou cried. At this point, it seemed that all she had left was crying. Helian Weiwei's gaze was indifferent as she watched this scene unfold. The corners of her mouth slowly curled up. Old Master Gu, look, no matter how much you deny it, your granddaughter has already started to fight amongst herself. Old Master Gu's left eye had already turned green because of Gu Rou's bump. He seemed to have aged 10 years in an instant. The white hair on his forehead was messy, and even his back was bent. Where was the domineering aura he had just now? He first glanced at Helian Vivian and opened his mouth, but he could not bring himself to do so. But this matter had to be settled. If this continued, the Gu family would only be even more embarrassed. Thus, he turned his head and looked at his good friend of many years, old Master Bai. Old Bai, look at my rower now. She also knows that she was wrong. She's not a child with a bad heart. I didn't notice. She said before that the Zhuan boy was too difficult to get close to. She had never liked a boy so much. As her grandfather, I was worried for her. For the Zhuan boy, she had done too many things that she wouldn't have done, including everything she is doing now. It's all because she wants to pursue the Zhuan boy. The more old Master Gu spoke, the lower his voice became. Can you say something for Rou? or on account of our many years of relationship? You're by family raised a Jew. The people of Jewway Corporation will definitely listen to what you say. A Jew can make us apologize however she wants. But can row, or leave some face for her? After all, she's still a child. She did something wrong in a moment of impulse. Fortunately, a Jew didn't suffer any harm. Why don't we? Bang! Old Master Gu had not finished his words. He heard a sharp gust of wind suddenly sweep past his ears. It was fierce. What flew past his ear was not something else, but a transparent goblet. The goblet flew to the wall behind Old Master Gu. Then it fell to the ground and turned into pieces of debris. The water gradually splashed onto Old Master Gu's face. This made him unable to recover for a long time. It was obvious that he was frightened by this sudden sound. When he turned around with pale lips, he saw Bai Xuan standing tall and straight. Because the goblet in his hand was gone, he was particularly eye-catching. The pure white suit gave people a sharp and vicious aura. His handsome face was even colder at that moment. Chapter 1241. Bai Xuan. Gu Ro's red and haggard eyes slowly widened. She did not expect Bai Xuan to actually attack her grandfather. Old Master Gu's face was also filled with shock and disbelief. However, Bai Xuan only stared at him. He was like a poisonous giant snake that was spitting its tongue at him. The surrounding wind kept pouring in from the half-open window and blowing on Bai Xuan's face. No one knew how much pain his heart felt when he heard those words and saw those videos. His chest felt as if it had been pierced by a blade. It was so painful that almost all his internal organs were cold. His throat felt as if there was a ball of fire burning. Bai Xuan knew that this time, his pain had nothing to do with the cold. His heart ached. When everything Gu Ro had done was exposed in front of him, his heart felt as if it had been placed on a fire of anger. Inch by inch, he had nowhere to put it. Bai Xuan had never thought that the child he had carefully protected for so many years would one day be bullied like this. Moreover, the reason why those people dealt with her and mocked her was all because of him. When these people were talking, he was clearly in the cafeteria, but he did not notice anything. What was he doing at that time? He was actually afraid that a Jew would like someone else and want to leave him after knowing his thoughts. So he tried his best to restrain his feelings and told himself to stay away from her. From there, he showed an unprecedented indifference, so much so that a Jew was actually ostracized when she was less than 2 meters away from him. The feeling in his heart was no longer as simple as just feeling uncomfortable. If this still caused a Jew to be hurt, then what was the point of him enduring everything for a long time to deal with those businessmen? Everything he did was to make a Jew not do anything. As long as she was responsible for being happy, she would continue to be happy. Now that he thought about it, a Jew must have sensed his deliberate alienation back then. That was why she did not say anything at that time. She silently took the lunchbox and moved to another table. Bai Xuan no longer knew how to express his feelings. As if he had been drenched in snow, his hands could not help but clench involuntarily. Because he used too much force, his nails sank into his flesh. However, at this moment, Bai Xuan seemed to not feel any pain at all. He only looked at Gu Ro coldly and said word by word, "If killing is not against the law, I really want to shoot you to death." Gu Ro was shocked. Then, even her lips turned pale and colorless. She had thought about the consequences if Bai Xuan found out what she had done. But none of them were things that Bai Xuan would disregard the friendship between the two families and completely fall out with her like this. Does he not want that contract anymore? Gu Ro's thoughts were always the same. She thought that she was the one who understood Bai Xuan the best. In fact, those contracts were nothing to Bai Xuan. If there was no a Jew, if it wasn't for a Jew, Bai Xuan would not be so modest to the Gu family. Bai Xuan, what are you doing? Old Master Gu stood in front of his granddaughter. Even a judge has to give people a chance to turn over a new leaf. Bai Xuan, you should know who Ro became like this for. Bai Xuan raised his eyes. I've never said that I had a good impression of her. When she came to me, I had already rejected her very clearly. But your Gu family actually thinks that it's okay to bully a Jew like this? You even want to use the Bai family's kindness to pressure others? What do you mean that a Jew was not hurt anyway? I'm not even willing to let her touch a single needle. What did your Gu family do? Sow discord. Ostracize. You even wanted you to not be able to enter the house. You want me to save face for your granddaughter. Then who will save face for our Jew? At this point, Bai Juan's eyes darkened bit by bit. Grandpa Gu. I'm calling you Grandpa Gu now because of my grandfather. You don't have to think about using my grandfather to avoid the punishment you deserve. From the moment the matter was exposed until now, Gu Rou first pretended to be pitiful and denied what she had done. She said that it was the Ju Wei group who was bullying her because of their big business. When the video came out later, she said that she had never thought of framing a Jew. Did she really want someone to upload the chat record so that they would learn what it meant to obediently admit their mistakes? Since you don't even have the right attitude to apologize, then don't blame our Bai family for not taking into account our old friendship. I know very well what the Gu family did when they were doing business. Perhaps those things are nothing overseas, but this is China. Grandpa Gu, I'll definitely make your Gu family lose everything. Bai Juan, you can't do this. Gu Rou cried even harder. You can't do this to me. You can't do this to the Gu family. Bai Juan sneered. That youthful and handsome face was no longer as indifferent as before. Instead, for the first time, there was a terrifying anger. Why can't I do this to your Gu family? I've already warned you to stop. I didn't expect you to be even more heartless than I thought. I like you, I like you. Gu Rou looked at Bai Juan with her beautiful eyes. She cried so pitifully, as if she wanted Bai Juan to feel a little compassion. How can you be so ruthless to someone who likes you? Bai Juan looked down at her and said solemnly, because you were ruthless to the person I like first. Gu Rou suddenly paused, and even her voice was completely blocked by Bai Juan's words. His words were like the second bomb of tonight's birthday banquet. They were thrown into the spacious hall, triggering countless chain reactions. Everyone was stunned, as if they couldn't believe what they had heard. They all looked at each other in dismay. The person that Bai Juan said that he liked was his sister, a Jew? Even Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows in surprise. Bailey Shangxia, on the other hand, narrowed his pair of sinister and beautiful eyes. His voice was extremely cold as he said, he better not mean what I think he meant just now. If it was, he would break his legs and throw him into the demon world to feed the demons. A Jew was their family, okay? What like? Destroy. Hellion Qingchen didn't need to think to know what her brother was thinking. She could only raise her head and look at the ceiling. She thought to herself that what he said was exactly what she thought. Bailey Shangxia immediately turned his head and exchanged a tacit look with his father. Beligaju gave him an indifferent look. Bailey Shangxia's thin lips curled up evilly. Then he moved his wrists left and right, as if he was ready to beat someone up with actual combat. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.